Going live. Hi, everybody. My name is John Bell, and this is the Harbinger Report. Tonight, we're going to be interviewing Sancho, a fan favorite. Many people have been asking when he's going to come back on. We've been trying to get together on that for a while. He's been working hella crazy, but he's here tonight, so very excited about that. I got an email this week, and I had one last week too, asking him when Sancho was coming back. So we got him. Before we get into it, I want to cover some local news real quick, and I'm going to try and do it quickly. First of all, jumping right into it, everybody has heard the controversy of the Olympics. All right. So, a major part of the Olympics. Now, everyone saw, everyone's talking about the whole blasphemy thing with Jesus and the Last Supper, but I think it's a little bit of a misdirection because it's taken away from a larger significance that took place here. And the larger significance is it was actually a satanic, Illuminati satanic ritual, publicly televised satanic ritual, is what I claim. And in that ritual, they're telling you a message, they're telling you a prophecy, their prophecy. And what is that? Well, look, and I looked, and behold, a pale horse, and his name that sat on him was Death, and hell followed with him. And power was given unto them in the fourth part of the earth to kill with the sword, and with hunger, and with death, and with the beasts of the earth. All right. So he's talking about the four horsemen of the apocalypse. All right. The first one, the pale rider, whose name is Death, and hell follows with him. Now I'm going to be explaining that in or going into more detail on that on another show where I go into the identity of the Antichrist. All right. That I plays off of my last show. Then you have war that follows the first horse. Then you have famine, and then you have pestilence. The four horsemen of the apocalypse, and this satanic ritual. They're sitting here saying that we're getting ready to go into this. They're basically just like my last episode. My last episode was about how I claim that 9/11 was actually a mass satanic public human sacrifice televised as a satanic ritual, as an Illuminati ritual, to bring in, to usher in the reign of the time of their long awaited coming of their Messiah, the Antichrist. That's what I claim it was. This is a furtherance of that. You remember the tunnel ceremonies was a Sweden that was so crazy. Again, it was about the coming of the Antichrist. All right, this is a furtherance of that, and they believe that when they do these rituals, they are given more power, and that's what it's about. So in this image, I took off of this guy's TikTok video. It's just an image that they showed of the pale horse coming. Now, what was really significant is it was riding across the water. That's huge. Remember in my last video, I said you had the Washington Monument, the obelisk, which is basically the missing uh, 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 member of Osiris that his queen ISIS, who's also known as Columbus, who we call the Statue of Liberty, that was given to us by the French Freemasons. All right, that, and remember, it's the French Freemasons that created the French Revolution, all communist takeover, and later groups of that, also globalist communists, created what became the Bolshevik Revolution of Russia. And now we are now facing the same thing from these communists, these communists in the United States and in several other countries. If you notice, many of the last elections, there's a pattern, have been stolen, and they're all stolen by these same globalists that are putting globalist communists into power. All right. So you see this guy coming across water, and that's a big significance. As above, so below. The mirror world. All right. The water represents the depths of the spiritual world that mirror and reflect this world. So this creature is coming from the abyss, all right, which is what the Bible says about the coming of the Antichrist. Now, the next one we see, it's clicking slow. So in the next one we see that the Antichrist, if you will, the horseman, the white horseman, gets off of the horse and is carrying what looks like folded sheets of linen, all right, and presents this as a sacrifice, as an offering. And I'll get to who in the next thing. But what could that linen represent? Now, I'm only speculating here, but what I'm thinking it is, that linen represents the white robes of the Christian martyrs that are to be sacrificed by Satan in the time of tribulation. And so I claim that that's what this is. Looks sweet and innocent. It's not. It's saying we're getting ready to sacrifice billions of people in your honor to what? Oh, look right here. You see the golden calf? Imagine that. Where we heard that before? Like in my last episode. So in Psalms, they served their idols and were ensnared by them. They sacrificed to demons their own sons and daughters, shedding innocent blood, the blood of their own sons and daughters, whom they sacrificed to the idols of Cana, descending land with bloodshed, desecrating the land with bloodshed. So they defiled themselves. God curses anyone in the Old Testament that served and sacrificed to this god, which was known as Moloch. We discussed that in my last episode. Moloch is most often depicted as a golden calf, or in more modern times as the all-seeing owl. All right. And God curses anyone who does Moloch worship or sacrifice. The Vatican placed a giant statue of Moloch at the Colosseum entrance in Rome. All right. A giant statue of Moloch at the Colosseum entrance in Rome. All right. There's another article about it. Here, I make a showing of that statue in Rome at the Colosseum, and what you have with the this image from the Satanic Olympics. All right. Everyone knows the story about the woman that was beaten up by the biological man, and her words were, "It wasn't fair," and it's not. I mean, they're trying to normalize mental illness. All right, they're trying to normalize mental illness. So, I just added Sancho back. He left us for a second. So now Elon Musk says Christianity is under threat in response to blasphemous Olympic ceremony. That's right. That's right. Christianity is in a major threat right now, and the world should be responding to this in a major way. Other religions don't put up with you blaspheming their religion, but it's okay if it's Christianity, you know? No. Mm-mm. But who's not responding? Who should be responding? Still waiting on the Pope's response. He said something about the Olympics, but it wasn't about blasphemy. You know, this man is completely evil, and I claim he's not a pope at all. Does not have the grace of God. Here's the thing: there's a pattern, and when you do police investigations, you look for patterns. There's a pattern that governments in the last elections, whether it was Mexico, whether it was Poland, whether it was Brazil, whether it's Venezuela, whether it was France, whether it was England, all these elections have been stolen, just like Trump election. They steal them and they replace these people. They put in communists, all right? I know a person that was running for president in Mexico. I said, what happened? And he said they didn't give him an option of even being on the ballot. It was a way to manipulate it. And then they put a communist female in office that would serve our interests, the communist, globalist, New World Order interests. All right. I claim that the same thing took place in the Vatican. And hey, look at this. Here's proof, evidence of that. So Julian Assange with WikiLeaks, right? George Soros, Barack Obama, and Hillary, as I call her, because that's where that chick is from, orchestrated a coup in the Vatican to overthrow the conservative Pope Benedict and replace him with a radical leftist Francis. All right. There's evidence to support this on multiple levels. I won't go into that in heavy detail now, but it's worth promoting. Now, since they won't do their job, I'm going to do it. This is the King of the universe, Jesus Christ. Amen. Praise God. Get some. The solution to everything in our world right now is this man. And everything we're facing in our world right now is a war, a spiritual war between the forces of good versus evil. And right now, evil is taking over. You know why? Because good sits back on their butts and does nothing about it. That's why. Oh, we're so tolerant. Oh, we're so inclusive. Oh, because we're damn snowflakes. That's why. That's why we're being conquered. All right. But Jesus is the solution to everything. So I want to counter some of that blasphemy and just throw that out there. Moving on, because I want to get to our awesome guest, Sancho. This is important. Venezuela, socialist dictator Nicolas has declared victory after an election which many Venezuelans believe lost by a large margin, and now violent civil war has erupted. So he stole the election, they're saying. All right. Venezuelan president for third term but claims victory in stolen election. Okay. They said, just like with the last Trump election, he started losing in the polls. So they just conveniently shut all the polls down. And then when they reopened them, oh, he magically won. Yeah. Just like where we heard that before, you know, exactly what happened. Not to mention, I talked to a friend of mine recently who's at the fire department, and he was talking about how during the Trump election, he said he saw polling stations that closed down, and he said he saw vans pulling up with duffel bags full of ballots that were loading in there. He told me that this last week. So he saw it go down. He's like, this is illegal, wrong, and not right. Since when do elections in America take weeks as opposed to a day? We had to stop our voting because we had a water line break in Georgia. Well, that turned out to be completely false. Just a made up lie to shut down the elections. Who goes to prison for that? Who goes to jail for that? Because they should be. All right. Venezuelan dictator names Elon Musk as his new arch enemy. Why do you think he would pick on Elon Musk? Does Elon Musk come across as the type of guy who is a threat to anybody? The reason he is because of free speech. Free speech is the threat in communism. All right. That's why in America, we have the cancel culture. That's why in America, if people don't like what you say, you're canceled. And then they make a straw man out of you. That's why channels are suppressed. That's why if you mention certain things, your shows are removed. That's communism. Communism. And I'm pointing it out because what's happening there is going to be happening right here because the same people are doing the same things. So they disrupt into civil war. All right. Now, look at this. They go and raid editors' home. Again, what did I just say is the threat under communism? Globalist communism, neo-globalist communism. It's freedom of speech, news reporting. doing what we're doing right now, trying to warn people of stuff you're not going to get in a one-sided propaganda, globalist-owned mainstream news media that aren't journalists, but actors who read from scripts with editors that tell them what they can do and what they can't, period. Now, here's another thing. Maduro erects re-education camps. Wow, scary. Well, guess what? There are 800 re-education camps, aka Auschwitz. These are concentration camps for Americans in the United States, one for every major city. I know where the nearest one here in Louisiana is, Fort Polk. Fort Polk. I've seen some of these things with my own eyes, like on the border of Colorado. Giant facilities, brand new state-of-the-art equipment, not a single person in them. And their excuse for building them was, oh, we have a place to put all the illegal aliens. Yeah, there's no illegal aliens in there. Not to mention, what is coming across the border with illegal aliens is a bunch of Muslims and Chinese. And more we're getting reports that they're being told they're here. Once they're triggered to go active, they're going to start attacking infrastructure and Americans in the United States. And we're just opening the door and inviting the wolf into the hen house. You can't invite the wolf in the hen house and not expect it to slaughter all the hens. Now, attorney accuses FBI of deceptive practices in Oklahoma City bombing records case. Yeah, the reason I show this is because my last episode was how 9/11 was actually an inside job by our own government. By the way, I lived in Italy working on my master's in theology. And when I was studying at the Vatican, the Pontifical University, their president had just gotten reelected, and he came from their intelligence agency. And the first page of the newspaper for all of Italy, the day he was elected, said this: 9/11 was an inside job, and all the intelligence agencies of the world know it. And he was telling the truth. That is the truth. And if that upsets you, I'm sorry, but it's the truth. Now the question is why. And so that's why I'm showing this. This is also, when you have a terrorist attacks, no, these are our own government staging this. Just like when we start having terrorist attacks with these Muslims and Chinese they're bringing in the UN's weaponized, been a long day, weaponized replacement migration. All right, go look that up. Go look up the UN's page on replacement migration. All right, then you will read about what I saw when I went to Canada. I didn't see any Canadians in Canada. They've been replaced by Chinese, Muslims, and East Indians. Oh, and if you do or say anything to offend one of these immigrants, you go to prison. And the law is so subjective, you didn't even have to say anything at all. But if they perceive you were being offensive, you go to prison. And that brings up the next thing I want to talk about real quickly here. If I can find it. Sorry, I'm coming to Sancho, I promise. Okay, and that's this. Oh, no, that's not this. But Pope Francis calls for a new world order. Yeah, that wasn't it. It's this. I came across this story. Emily Jones Bolton, child killer cleared of murder. All right. Now, I found a conflicting report that also said that they prosecuted the murder. But what this was a beautiful young little girl in England that was in a park with her mom and dad. And the little girl was on a little tricycle riding around. And this immigrant Muslim, they won't say that in the news, this immigrant Muslim comes and slits this little girl's throat. Slits this little girl's throat. When I heard that story yesterday, it made me cry. And it's hard to make me cry. But the loss and the tragic loss of such an innocent, beautiful little life and the devastation of that poor family. They said the little girl was crying out, "Mama, mama, mama. And the dad that was holding her in his arms was just saying, Emily, stay with me. Stay with me, Emily. Stay with me. Stay with me, Emily. She died en route to, they tried to air med her out to hospital. She died en route. And this is the trash we are bringing into our country in the name of tolerance and liberalism and all that bullshit. It's bullshit that our children are murdered by trash we bring in here. And what do the governments do? They protect the trash because it's an agenda. UK Prime Minister calls Brits protesting murder of 3 young girls thugs and promises to keep Muslim community safe. So at a concert, some Muslims start attacking young girls. They stabbed 12 girls, some of them multiple times in the face. In the Prime Minister, sack of shit that he is, that man should be drug out in the street and tried for treason by the people. And so should any politician of any country that treats their citizens this way. So he doesn't defend the innocent children that are slaughtered and murdered. He protects the Muslims, the replacement migration, which is the satanic UN agenda. Look it up. And they're doing it to all Western countries. Some countries, the demographics have changed forever. Sweden. There's parts of England, same thing. The demographics have changed forever. These countries are lost. We treat these people good because we believe in tolerance. We believe in love. We believe in inclusion. We believe in immigration. So long as that's not used as a weapon against us. The shooter in the Trump assassination. Yep, this is something else we should not be tolerating because it's here to kill you and your family. It's here to kill Christianity. There is a war against Christianity. It's not getting less. It's only going to get more. And that's what I'm pointing out here. James O'Keefe predicts multiple black swan events leading up to the next Trump election. That is true. That is very important. All right. I love this woman. I encourage people to follow her. She is a journalist out of Australia. I love Australia. Maria Z. Humanity stands against the Satanists. Actually, it doesn't. That's the problem. But I praise people like her trying to encourage Christians to actually stand up and not be little damn snowflakes. What else is coming? I talk about this a lot. People ask about the mark of the beast. This is what the mark of the beast is going to be. Tech giant CEO tells Davos meeting cell phones will be built directly into the human brain. You won't need a cell phone. You won't need a computer. They're going to use technology. The AI mark of the beast is going to be technology that connects your human brain directly to AI. And Bill Gates says that this AI is going to give you instructions and tell you what to do. And oh, how nice it's going to be. He says that if you follow the orders, it will put money in your digital account, which, by the way, that means they're crashing the dollar so that they can force us into this new digital currency, one world order system that you have to have the mark of the beast in order to access. All right. But he doesn't say that if you disobey the orders, you'll have money removed out of your account. And if you're too bad, they just turn off your account and you're sent to a re-education center because you're not a good little globalist communist. You still believe in Christian values and human rights and freedom. That doesn't exist in the Great Reset. All right. In the Build Back Better. All right. This is huge. Real quickly. Pastor Biggs, this is a man that I listened to this week in an interview. He was faith-filled. He was phenomenal. I encourage people to listen to him. This man publicly put out before 4 months before Trump's attempted assassination, that he put out a vision, the Lord told him, of the assassination of Trump, and he gave it in explicit detail, including the bullet going by the head and bleeding in the ear, him jumping up, raising the fist. All that was in the thing. But more important than the prophecy of the Trump assassination was he warns of major pandemics that are getting ready to hit that will cause more lockdowns and will be very scary. Right? Western food supply is being cut off. All right. We just had another major bridge go down. This is for attacking infrastructure. Investigative journalist sets to expose giant kidnapping ring, disappearance of children. Yeah, by our government. Our governments run the kidnapping rings. So does Francis. That's Saka, whatever. Trump is going on TikTok. And that's a good thing. Remember, I told people, don't be afraid of TikTok. Is it perfectly safe? No, but it's no worse than Meta, Facebook, or just about any other app you use. The reason they demonize it is because they don't control it like they control all the rest, and they want media to be one-sided. All right. Trump warns of globalists planning to depopulate humanity. Yes, this is absolutely true. Many of their plans are depopulation of humanity. All right. You can read into that what you want, but that's what it's about. And that's what these globalists are wanting. Dude, they want to wipe. Look, Elon Musk said that in the Billionaires Club, that the billionaires were contacting entities in other dimensions. And these entities said, we will make you gods if you're willing to kill off the rest of humanity. So they're like, okay, sounds good to me. Of course, whistleblower says it was all messed up. All right. New movies coming out. Die Hard. Remakes. Die Another Day. But the real person to die another day is this. Also, new studies show. New study finds 100% of men would eat any fruit given to them by a naked woman. I think it's like programmed in our DNA. One last thing. Kamala Harris says that if she gets elected, she will ban all guns by executive order. All right. Now, by the way, Hillary also promised her constituents that within 6 months of being elected, when she lost to Trump, that she would do the same thing. Imagine that. Same agenda. Okay. But one thing I'd like to point out to people is presidential executive orders actually are unconstitutional. It's a power grab. They shouldn't have that power. The entire reason why we have the separation of powers in the United States between the executive branch, the judicial branch, and the legislative branch is so you have checks and balances, and specifically so the executive branch cannot enact its own laws without congressional approval. Executive orders are unconstitutional. It's an abuse of power that we've just become normalized with. Now, who else talks about taking guns from the public? Oh, this man. To control a nation, first disarm to conquer a nation, it's first important that you disarm its citizens. Well, let's hear what George Washington had to say. When any nation mistrusts its citizens with guns, it is sending a clear message. It no longer trusts its citizens. Such a government has evil plans in store for those citizens. And that's what I'm saying. No free man shall be disarmed the use of arms. And show that long day. The strongest reason for people to retain the right to keep and bear arms is what? For hunters? So people can go hunting? So people can be gun nuts and go to a range and shoot cans? No. The reason we were given the Second Amendment is because countries become tyrannies against their own people. It's to protect people against tyranny. And another point on that, when the government says, oh, well, you shouldn't have military weapons, bullshit. You should have every weapon that the military has. And you should have access to that. Why? because the whole point of the Second Amendment is to protect yourself from your own damn government. There's another quote that the biggest problem with bad government is government growing too big, too strong. It becomes a monster. And I'll show those in other clips. Save time, we'll move on. George Washington, when government takes away citizens' rights to bear arms, it becomes citizens' duties to take away government's right to govern. Booyakasha. Children need to be taught the real history of the world. They need to know what happened in the past when only the government had guns. All right. Very important. All right. That's it. I think I've covered everything there. Sorry for that little rant. I hope whatever. Let's move on to the topic, and I'll bring on Sancho. Sancho, you there?
Yes, sir. How y'all doing tonight?
Man, I gotta thank Sancho for his patience, because I started the show a lot later because I had some problems pop up on my end today that I had to take care of and push the show being back a lot later. But I want to thank Sancho for being so patient with me tonight for that, and waiting while I went through that news ramble. Some of that stuff I really wanted to get out. One last thing I wanted to get out, and I meant to start with this. It was the United States government that tried to assassinate would-be and former President Donald Trump. It was the United States government that tried to assassinate Donald Trump. It was the United States government. That's where we're at now, just like what's going on in Venezuela and these other countries. All right? That's the level we're at. So I want to put this on the record. If Donald Trump is assassinated, it wasn't Iran, it wasn't Russia, it wasn't China, it was the United States government to further their plans and agenda of taking over our country. If there's any chance we have of stopping these globalists, he's it. If we allow them to steal this election, there will never be another free election in the United States. And it won't be much longer than that, then there won't be a United States at all. I promise you. But anyway, so to bring in Sancho, the audience knows who you are. At least most of them, I'm sure. But for those that don't, I'd like to give just a very short bio if you can, and I'd like to recap the story of when you were had your Dogman encounter.
Yeah, just real quick, you made me think of something. A lot of people think of 9/11. I was in the military during 9/11. I actually landed in Afghanistan. We were the first troops, like 3 months right after we landed in Afghanistan from the 9/11 attack. There was already cities built there already, generators that take years to drill into the ground for natural gas. They were already there. I'm like, what the hell? Like, I'm like, how did they set up so quick if we just got bombed like 2 months ago? And the day before 9/11, if you look up 9/10, Donald Rumsfeld, which was I can't remember what he was the head of at the time, but he announced that $4.5 billion in gold, metric tons of gold, were missing and unaccounted for. Then the next day, you got bombed, and then that news just went away. And then when they tried to do the audit of the missing gold of who could have had it, the part of the Pentagon that got hit by a plane or missile, whatever you want to call it, hit the part of the Pentagon that has all the information of all the records of who checked out gold and who received gold. So
Imagine that. I
imagine that.
had an uncle that worked in the Pentagon, and he doesn't know about this stuff, but you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right on what you just said. What a lot of people don't understand is that part of the Pentagon had been evacuated because of renovations. Now, just before this event, Donald Rumsfeld, I was watching Fox News when he came on and made the announcement that night. Donald Rumsfeld came on and said $3 trillion is missing from the Pentagon. They cannot account for $3 trillion. And after they were doing the renovations of the Pentagon, they moved out that whole side of the Pentagon where they claim the plane hit. The only people, once they finished the renovations, that they allowed back into that area was the team that was investigating where that $3 trillion went. And they were the ones that were destroyed in the attack on the Pentagon. You think that's a coincidence? No, that is not a coincidence. That is a murder. That is a murder to cover your ass. That's what it was. And and I can tell you, it was no plane that hit the Pentagon. It was a missile. There was a missile. There have been pilots after pilots after pilots that have performed the same maneuver hundreds of times, and physically the plane could not handle the trajectory that they know that they have on radar that it took. It was too horizontal across the ground too. It was a missile. It was a missile. Another thing people don't understand is, do you know that the Pentagon has multiple batteries on top of it that are anti-missile and anti-plane batteries? So that if in the chance there was a plane that was trying to target the Pentagon, it would blow that plane up, or missile. But and there's multiple redundant systems. So if one goes down, others back it up. Multiple, like 5 at least. And guess what? They were all down on the day of the attack. But furthermore to that, the biggest smoking gun is NORAD. People aren't aware of NORAD. They're the National Command bunker that you see in like War Games movie, great movie back in the day. And NORAD's job is to bring down any plane that causes a threat or stop squawking, as they say, for a bird, right? And that said, NORAD was given orders from on top to not send intercept fighters to the area of 9/11. In fact, sent them all the way to the other end of the country and told them we were running terrorist drills, not to be concerned of terrorists flying planes into buildings in the cities and attacking the. What a coincidence that is. The same day they run a drill, it actually happens for real. Well, when you do investigations of these things, you find that that is a common thing you find all the time. And just like remember the Oklahoma City bombing thing, or what was it, the Boston Marathon runner bombing? They found there were federal agents that were doing simulations of setting off bombs there the day that it actually happened. How's that? They do that because if you're caught setting those bombs, you have an excuse or an out. Same thing happened in England. They had metro lines where poisonous gas was released. And I listened to the news coverage and they said, hey, we were doing a drill, the government, of that happening when it actually happened for real. Now, how can that happen at every terrorist attack? And it does. You might not always hear about it. So yeah, to go off on that big tangent, but you're 100% right, Sancho, and that's the level of evil that we're dealing with. So, go ahead.
All right. So what you want me to do? I
I'm
kind of
sorry.
lost.
I'm sorry. I'm fired up tonight. I'm really upset about
Nah, you're all right. You're all right, man. I feel your frustration. I really
I'm
do.
upset about the death of that little girl, the hand of trash Muslims that we're bringing in the country. Um, And that, look, that's not to say all Muslim people are bad. I'm sure there are good Muslims, but we, like Donald Trump said, why are we bringing in all the trash all the time? Used to be
Yep.
you had to have and that just doesn't mean just poor either. But you got people that have criminal records. How many times, I can't tell you how many times in the news I'm seeing stories of immigrants attacking and killing people or raping them, and they're like, oh yeah, well, they had a whole history of that. We've even kicked them out before, but we let them back in. How does that make sense? But anyway, sorry, Sancho, recap your Dogman encounter.
Oh man. So how do we start with that?
You
So
tell them how you got involved with the Mexican cartel.
well, the reason I got involved in the cartel was when what is it called? When the economy collapsed, like in 2009. The
2008.
housing market crashed. I had a pretty good job, stable life, had a good everything going on. The economy crashed, my life crashed. I had a friend that always did all kind of not so legal things, always trying to get a quick buck, and he moved up in the organized crime world. And I asked him for help to make money, and basically got me into the cocaine business. And from there, I just moved my way through the ranks and from the streets to middleman to being the plug in the southern part of the United States of distributing cocaine. While I was down there, in the cartels, I saw a lot of things that I never knew were possible or even thought that could happen. That on the spiritual warfare side, terrorist side, people that you would never think that you think that were here to protect you that aren't there to protect you. It's like wolf in sheep's clothing protecting us. Um, I got into being physically fit because my ex wife left me, ended up taking everything that I had, and this is before I ended up before I getting involved in the cartel, the drugs. I had real low self esteem and problems, and I didn't like taking drugs. And I had a therapist tell me, hey, you might want to get into being a little physically active to get your anxiety under control and your depression. So I started doing that. In about 8 months to a year's time, I started looking really good because I devoted my time to being in the gym, basically 40 hours a week. And you can really change your body up in a diet. Well, one day, my friend and I, the one that got me involved in the cartel, decided, hey, we made a bet that because I used to tell him I used to run a lot of marathons. I used to run a lot of these endurance challenges and around the United States, or actually in the lowest part of the United States. He told me, he's like, oh, you think you're such a badass and you're physically active, you can run for a long time. And I'm like, yeah, I really can. He's like, well, how about you let's make a bet, see if you can run with these guys that run across the border all night. And basically what these guys did was run cocaine across the border, about 10 people deep with backpacks with certain amounts of cocaine on their body, and they just run across the border all night long until they got to a certain destination. And they were unloaded, and then the guys would basically be driven back across the border. And that's how I ended up getting into my Dogman encounter.
Okay. So, yeah, tell them, if you would, tell them too about the Bruja.
So when I was down in Mexico, they have ways of trying to figure out who you are, what makes you tick, what makes you lose control, something they can have over you to see what they can and can't trust you with. Um, like they would ask me what kind of drugs are my favorite drugs when I would party down there, and I'm like, I don't really do drugs. I mean, I drink occasionally, but I'm not a drug person. And sometimes these guys, they would take it seriously, like if it was a real job, and they're like, oh, you're is that what you say? He's like, yeah. He's like, well, like, how about you pee in this cup right now, and then you let me know. I mean, show me that you prove to me that you don't use any drugs. And sure enough, five grown men sitting me watching pee in a cup, and like, you got to piss clean. And then, sometimes you'd be into these parties, and they, what makes you tick, what kind of girls you like, you don't like girls, what kind of men you like. Oh, you don't like men, what kind of little boys you like, what kind of little girls, or are you into animals, and what kind of other stuff. Well, once you start getting higher up into this organization, they want to know how dedicated you are and what you're about, what you have inside, who you are as a person. And I got took to see one of the main cartel bosses, and they had a woman in there. And basically the woman wanted to see, she's like, you're gonna talk to her, you're gonna, basically answer a couple questions for her. And she reached out and tried to shake my hand. And when I did shake my hand, it felt like a cold, like basically grabbing a huge chunk of ice. It felt so cold and weird, and the coldness ended up crawling up my arm. I felt like my arm was almost dying, like it just was going numb. And I pulled back away really hard, and I'm like, like I mean, it scared the hell out of me. And I'm like, bitch, don't ever touch me again. Like, I don't want to touch this woman again. I don't want to do anything with her, because I mean, I just, like, it felt like it was just me and her in the room, and like it got cold really quick. And he's like, no, don't worry about it. You're good. All you got to do is just, a little simple handshake. And she trying to looked at him. He goes, don't worry, he's good. He won't betray the organization, but he won't make it any further than what he is right now. And basically, she just told him that I didn't have a heart for some of the work that was going to be coming up. And a bruja means like basically a witch. Like, but the thing is, I don't know if this woman was a woman. I couldn't tell you that 100%. And like basically, she just basically told him that in the end, I realized what she was telling him, that I didn't have the heart to do certain things like kill children, put children into slavery, and just basically, I guess, murder people. That wasn't my thing. My thing was I was just trying to make a quick buck and not try to hurt anybody. I wasn't trying to put anybody's life on the line or torture people for money or anything like that. And that that was one of the times that I saw how, I guess, spirituality worked, or demonology. I have no idea. I wouldn't know what to call it, because I just that's not my specialty in this world.
Right. Well, that's definitely spirituality and demonology right there for sure. But another important point of that is what this witch told you actually turned out to be true, didn't it?
Yep.
So my point in that is there's real power out there, spiritual power that we're not aware of, but there's only two sources of that power. Is one is from the devil. All right. The devil will give you power if you bend the knee to his will. The other is Jesus. Those are the only two sources of real power out there. And I recommend everyone avoid the one and choose the other, because power only comes from two places. But what the witch said was true. So, and you mentioned the children. You stop me if you don't want me to say, but in previous times when we talked, you had said that I think it's important for the audience to understand that the cartels, they don't make their money as much from just running drugs and guns now as much as they do from human trafficking, and a lot of that human trafficking, unfortunately, is children. Um,
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, we did talk about that on your last show. I remember one time, we got we had a meeting out in southern Mexico, and we were out there, and they had this church-looking building out in the middle of nowhere, big compound-looking thing, and it had barbed wire to keep people out and people in. It was heavily guarded, and when we were in there, I looked in, like, I'm always looking at my surroundings, observing everything, and I noticed there was a lot of children in there, a lot of children in this compound, a lot of them, and I mean hundreds of them, and they were either native children or African children, and I started asking questions, to the man that put me in the situation I was in, or put me into the game. And he goes, man, he told me, he was like, if you think that, running drugs and cocaine is, $1 billion industry, he goes, that's $1 trillion industry right there. He's like, they make, 3 or 4 times the money that we make. He's like, but that's a whole different ball game. And he's like, you don't want to get involved in that, because it's a whole lot stricter over there. And I'm like, well, who's ordering these children? He goes, and he just kind of laughed, and he goes, Hillary. And I'm like, what? He's like, yeah, Hillary. And they call him Hillary's children, because, like, I don't know if you remember that show, Jerry's Kids, where he would do the marathon, and he raised money for children and all that. And they kind of made like this little joke about it. He's like, yeah, they're Hillary's kids. He's like, she's the one that's basically paying for all this stuff. And I'm like, oh god damn, it's like, that was one of the worst, when I started feeling the horrible things that, it's not just about drugs, and it's mainly about human trafficking. And that wasn't that wasn't a cool feeling I got that day. And, like, honestly, there was nothing that I could do. Just one guy, and he's like, in the guy that was, that brought me into this, and he was just telling me, he's like, you know what, don't even pay attention to it, don't mind. He's like, there's nothing that you can do, or anyone on this green earth can do, to stop this, what's going on here. And he's like, just, forget about it and move on. And I'm like, Jesus, like, what. And still to this day, I don't know what goes on. I mean, I kind of do know what goes on, but I mean, there's nothing I could do to stop it.
Right, right. Well, I had a friend of mine who was running for president of Mexico, and I asked him what happened, and they said that they blocked him from even being allowed on the ballot. Imagine that. They rigged it. And what did they put in his place? A uh, a
Jewish.
woman communist.
Yep.
Communist.
And that's another thing that I don't understand, how a country that's 99% Catholic, always believed Catholic, always voted Catholic, had this woman, Jewish Zionist, got voted in, and you don't hear anything about her until now. and they say she's an environmentalist, but she wants to push this green peace. And it's weird how whenever the president of Mexico right now pushed the Americans out of the oil field and the lithium mine that's over there in Sonora, Mexico, pushed them all out because that's when I don't know if you remember that Biden and what's her name, that old crazy witch, that what's her name? Oh man,
Kamala, Hillary,
no, the other one, the one that made all the money on the stock market,
Pelosi.
Pelosi. Yeah, her. You know how her and Pelosi and Biden were pushing to have electric cars. Well, they had their hands in Sonora, Mexico, where they found the big lithium mine, which is second only comparable to the one over there in Afghanistan. And when they got kicked out of there, that's when the stock market fell for lithium. Well, now they got this Jewish woman back in there, and now her plan is, guess what, to open up the petroleum and everything back to the Americans, to basically for Joe Biden and Pelosi and even this Kamala Harris. Now they're talking about pushing this green peace, green deal, and electric cars again.
Right.
So
Yep.
the connections aren't hard to make there.
Yep. Just like Francis, he gets in and he starts pushing the new Green Deal and all the communist, globalist agendas. He starts talking about climate change,
Oh
uh,
yeah.
all that stuff. Everything he says or teaches is communism. And there's 5 previous popes that have said you can't even be a moderate communist or socialist and call yourself a Christian, let alone someone imposing that claiming to be a pope with that crap. Yeah, it's bad and it's tragic. My buddy that was running for president, I tried to tell him, he didn't like when I told him this, but I tried to tell him that if he's a good man and he would have tried to put a stop to that stuff. He's been a speaker. He's a Latino that's been a speaker at some Trump rallies, and and there's videos of them together talking and at these rallies and stuff. And I told him, if you get in here there and you try to put a stop to this $1 trillion industry, as you put it, I said they're going to kill you. They're straight
Oh
out just
yeah.
gonna kill you. I said, now, hey, if you feel like that's what you got to do, then you got to. We all have a mission from God, and you got to do that mission no matter what the circumstances or the outcome is going to be. Just like Jesus had to die on a cross, right? That was the mission. But I just said I wanted him to know, I wanted his eyes to be open, wide open, as to what was going to happen if he did get in. So, on one hand, I'm happy he didn't get in because I want him alive. But on the other hand, that evil's going to continue to happen, and people don't understand. Uh, tell the people, who is it the cartels are afraid of or serve?
Oh, the American government, the CIA, the DEA, the people, all these secret 3-letter organizations that
I
don't serve
keep
the
trying
public. Those are.
That's it. I keep trying to tell people our government is evil. It's satanic. It's evil. That's who runs this. That's who runs these cartels. That's who runs the elections. That's who runs the drugs. That's who run the guns, the illegal guns I'm referring to. And that's who runs the child trafficking rings. And the Catholic Church is also complicit and involved in doing that. And so is Francis as well. There's a new book and author that came out talking about that very situation, naming names and people involved. So that's what's going on. I mean, we're in a time where Satan is taking over. The American government is evil. Now, that's not to say there's not good people there, but they've taken over the tops of these organizations to the point that now they're trying to assassinate presidents that would go against their own agenda, which is, you can't have anything more un-American than that going on. And that's why you see free speech and censorship and hate speech. Hate speech is just an excuse to control, censor you. That's all it is. And eventually they're going to say the Bible is illegal because it's hate speech. Why? Because it disagrees. And communism, globalism, they can't allow opposition, so they remove it. They can't even argue the logical points because they can't win. So they remove it. That's why you have to be one-sided with these people. It's like Hollywood. I worked in Hollywood. And Hollywood, if you're a conservative, boom, you get the boot. And these are the people that scream DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. They scream tolerance all the time, but they're the most intolerant people on planet Earth. If you ever disagree with them, you're blacklisted. You're out. And that's how the system works. It lies. It says it's one thing, but what it actually does is the opposite. So, just like affordable health care. Yeah, right. Anything but. I mean, that's everything they do. It's the titles. Take the titles and switch it around, and it tells you the truth of what it is. Just like fact checkers, same thing. And by the way, they're all paid for by that one side to say what their claims. Oh, I fact checked this. I'm living at home alone with my 20 cats. But I'm the authority on all God's truth on planet Earth. I mean, right. Okay, so um, yeah, so we covered the how you got in the Bruja, which I think is an important part of that. The children, which I think is an important part for people to understand, and how deep that actually goes, because we're lied on the news about all this stuff, saying, "Oh, they're trying to fight child trafficking." No, they're not. They're the cause of it. They just try to pacify you. The U.S. was founded on not trusting government. How did that ever change? And it was also founded on personal uh, um, uh, um, self reliance. How did that change? And small government. How did that change? Anyway, I digress. So let's get into the night you went running and had your encounter. So when you started, what happened, and what did they give you to tie on your waist or belt?
So so that night I'm out there little bit before the sun starts going down, and they start prepping us, and they give these guys these little packets of like little protein, and like it's basically canned sardines and a couple of those like squinchers. I don't know if you tear the top off them and put them in some water, and
Yeah,
they'll
runners carry that stuff all the time, right?
okay, yeah. So they were giving them those, and I had my little running suit on and everything. I had some nice shoes on, and I was looking at these guys, and most of these guys were native, like 100% blown native Mexicans, like from the mountains. That they don't have no European blood in them. They're about 5'2" and real copper colory complected. And I'm trying to talk to them, and they're not really responding to me. And I'm saying, "Hey, how's it going?" Yada yada. Trying to make small talk with these guys. And the guy that was heading that mission that night, he's like, "Hey, man," he's like, "I need you to basically keep your mouth shut, quit asking questions." He's like, "You're here because you want to be here, and this is something that you got a simple bed in." He goes, "I would have, if I had my way, you wouldn't even be here." And I'm like, "Okay, damn, like just chill, bro. Like I'm just trying to make small talk." And
Right,
he's like, "Don't worry about what they got going on. Worry about you. And after this night, we don't have to see you again." So he just gives me like this little piece of burlap sack, or I don't know if that's the correct word you call it. And in Spanish, it's called a costal. And
yeah,
it's basically you put like stuff in there, flour, corn, or whatever. And he gave it to me. He's like, tie it onto your shirt, wherever. He's like, around your neck. I don't care. He goes, "This was gonna keep you alive throughout the night." And I'm like, "What the hell are you talking about? Like, this thing smells like straight, like dead animal feces and urine." I'm like, "Man, this is like, I'm not putting any." He's like, "You're gonna put it on, or you don't do the run." And I'm like, "Okay, whatever." So I ended up tying it to myself with one of those like a zip tie type thing. And we end up start just jogging throughout the night. And the guy told me, he's like, "Hey, for any reason you get lost, there's a phone tower and you could see it several miles out." He's like, just run there." He goes, "If you get left behind, just understand we're not stopping for you. So you're basically, if you want to stop right now, this is where you might want to stop and just go and enjoy your life." And I'm like, "No, I just, my machismo wouldn't let me stop, because of, him talking shit to me, and then my, having to lose the bet with my friend over there."
right.
And so we start running throughout the night, full moon, everything's going good. I'm keeping up a good pace, but a little bit of hour and a half into the run, maybe 2 hours at most, you can start hearing these like heavy breathing and snorting, and like some running on the ground, like hidden behind us, like if it was just like cows or horses or something running behind us. And I look back and I see some horses running back in the distance, and I'm like, what the hell? Like, I didn't think we had wild horses running, in the southern parts of the United States. I know they're up north and stuff like that in the mountains, but I didn't think they had them down here. And I'm still running, keep it going. I look back and they're getting closer, and the closer they're getting, they're not looking like horses anymore. And I'm like, why? What the heck? Like, why are these horses kind of looking more like dogs or wolves or something like that? And next thing you know, these things are catching up next to us, and I'm looking over, and they're these, I mean, cow size, like not as big as a cow, but smaller than a cow, but I mean, almost the same size, about 200-300 pound wolves running next to us. And I'm like freaking out. I'm like, hey man, yeah, hey man, we got these wolves running next to us, and the guy's like, hey man, don't worry, just keep running. Like they're not gonna do anything to you. He goes, just keep going, just shut up, keep going. Well, I'm over here running, kind of worried. The next thing you know, one of them stands straight the fuck up on his back legs, and he starts running. And no longer does it look like it looks more like a damn werewolf. And that's when I really start panicking, and I start flipping out. And I'm like, hey, man, there's a fucking werewolf running next to us. But I'm talking in Spanish to the guy, and the guy's like, hey, you need to shut the fuck up and keep going. Don't worry about him. And I'm like, hey man, are y'all not seeing this? Because like I'm thinking maybe I'm hallucinating or something, but no, man. It's like the guy's like, look, if you don't shut the fuck up, he's like, I'm gonna kill you right here. Basically, what he told me. He's like, shut up and keep running. And these guys they're not moving, they're not flinching, they're not worried about what's going on. And I'm the only one. And I'm like, man, I'm freaking out. I don't know what to do. I don't know what to say. And I just keep running. I'm looking around. These animals are running, like these creatures are now damn near all of them are running on their hind legs, looking at me. And I look over at one of them, and this thing's running right next to me, and he smiles, like just this big old shit-eating grin, like smile face, like not an angry smile, but just a friendly smile, like if he was some kind of freaking dog, and he knew me or we knew each other, and I'm like freaking out, and I'm like, this isn't right. Like I was just, I was lost at that moment, and they're just running around, playing with each other, pushing each other, doing flips, like not flips, but like rolling around on the ground. And they'd run out in front of us, run around back behind us, like if they were dogs at a dog park running with people.
Right.
And I mean, I didn't know what to do, and I just kept going. I just kept looking forward, and I just kept looking out the corner of my eyes. And then they ran with us for a good significant time. And then after a while, we started getting close to our destination. These animals just kind of veered off to the right and took off back down south to where we came from. And I'm just sitting there, just shocked, and giving my backpack to the guy. I had my friend right there waiting in the truck with me with a couple of beers, and I'm sitting here, and I get in the truck, and I'm talking to the guy, and he's all like, "So how'd you like it?" And I looked at him, I'm like, motherfucker, there's werewolves out there. And he looked at me, and he smiled, and he's like, yeah. And I'm like, no, you don't understand. There's fucking werewolves out there. And he goes, and he just kept laughing at me. He goes, you don't think I know there are werewolves out here? And I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, if I was like, there are werewolves out here, then that means vampires are real. I told him like that, and he just laughed at me. He goes, yeah, they're real too. And I'm just in there looking. I'm like, what the fuck do you mean? I'm like, you knew that these animals were out here the whole time, and you had me out here running with them. He's like, I'm telling you. He goes, you don't know. This is just the tip of the iceberg. There's so many things that you don't know that are involved in this game. And basically that night I was just, where did these people, where did these kings come from? Where, how did they get here? Are they, just so many questions came to my mind. But my friend just, he's like, don't even worry about it. And a lot of the times when he didn't want to talk about something, he just don't worry about it. Shut the fuck up and, you know, stay in your lane, do your business, and keep moving.
Right. Yeah, and you had said that it was one of the creepiest things in your life when you turn and look at this thing and it reaches down and just smiles at you, and you said it looked like a human smile.
Yeah, yeah, it really did. It like a human, like like I don't know if you ever had a dog, like a puppy smile at you, man, and it was in a way I guess you could say it was cute if it wasn't such a horrific looking animal, you know. But I mean, there was no evil intent, you know, from what I saw. Because I mean, I have stories. People are like, "Hey, man, this thing smiled at me with evil intentions," and like I was just panicked because I was panicked because I've never seen that before.
Right,
But from what I saw, it wouldn't. It didn't. It wasn't trying to harm me because I mean, if it wanted to, they could have wiped us out right then and there.
right,
No
easily.
question about it. Like I was not fighting that thing off, or the other 10 guys. We were not fighting six of these things off, or seven. I'm sorry.
Yep.
Yeah, well, that wasn't happening.
Yeah, I told DW on his channel one time, told a story that these Chinese family paid a cartel to um, to get their family across the southern border into the U.S. And he said they put together 5 Humvees, all of them with 50 cows on top of the Humvee. And he says, and they drove because they knew these things were out there. And he says, as they were driving, they got attacked by these things, and they're lighting up with these 50 cows trying to keep these creatures off. And he said they eventually got the Chinese family into the U.S., but not all the Humvee vehicles made it. Some of them bit it on the way. They wanted this family in there really bad, and so I thought that was I heard that story after yours, and so when I heard yours, it really made me think, twice, that there's other, and I've heard other people say that they've seen migration patterns that go down into Mexico and stuff like that. And I talked to Jody Cook with North American Dogman Project, and Jody Cook said that he's spoken to Border Patrol agents that said that they've seen these creatures and they've seen bodies from them. Then I heard another story of a guy who says he lived on the border, and he was using night vision goggles and watching like all these aliens come across, and he was talking about the coyote that was with him. And he said that this coyote, had a like AK-47 and fired at these creatures, and he said all these creatures, boom, just descended on that one guy that fired at him. Bad day for that dude. And this guy was telling how he's watching through these night vision goggles and saw all this go down. So there's a lot of stories of this. But tell me this: if the cartels are using those creatures, why do you think they would be using those? Why would it be necessary that they're there?
Well, well, now what I know now, these creatures are a hell of a lot more effective than any machines, any kind of camera system, anything that's out there. Because I mean, you got to think about it. It's like a guard dog on steroids times 100. You know, like why wouldn't you want to use something like that if you could, command, basically tell this creature what to do? Like you'd be unstoppable, especially if you had an army of them.
Right. So what the audience doesn't understand is there's not just one cartel.
Oh
There's
no.
there's multiple cartels, and there's infighting, and they compete against each other, right?
Oh yeah, yeah. At one time, they were a giant cartel. Like they were just this big, massive cartel. And this is like back in the '60s, '70s, and towards the end of the '80s. And that's when the American government started coming in, the CIA, DEA,
Divide
and
and conquer. That's what they do in the Middle East. That's what they do in the U.S. As long as you can keep people, oh, you're black. Oh, you're white. Oh, you're straight. Oh, you're not. I mean, as long as they can keep dividing everybody into little groups and
oh
make
yeah,
amongst those groups, they control you. That's called divide and conquer. Oldest military strategy.
yep. That's exactly what they did, and that's how so many different fractions started coming out in the cartel. Like so the ones that we were involved with down in the, like, basically a lot of them they run, it was originally the Gulf Coast cartel, and they were the originals that once they broke off from the main cartel, like the one that ruled over all Mexico at the time, it was them. And then they were having problems with the US DEA. And then at the time, since they had so much firepower, the American government decided to teach the certain like Mexico's top elite armies, like army personnel. They brought them to America and started teaching them the Navy SEAL tactics. You know how to basically be a one man army, and
So
then they sent them back to Mexico, huh?
what he's saying is they're taking these cartels and they're training them to be like U.S. Special Forces with
Well,
technology.
at first it was the Mexican U.S. forces were being trained, and then they were being let loose on the cartel, and they were basically kicking cartel ass. And then the cartel decided, hey, why don't, instead of fighting against us, why don't you fight with us, and we'll pay you 10 times your salary. And then all of a sudden, next thing you know, these guys started fighting for the Gulf Coast cartel, basically pushing the Mexican government and basically turned his back on the American government. And I mean, they were laying waste, and even against other cartels, they were laying waste to them. Well, from there, those special forces guys decided, hey, you know what? Why don't we become our own cartel and get the hell away from you guys? And then those guys ended up becoming Los Zetas, which basically ended up taking most of southern Texas, almost into Mexico over, and New Mexico over, and holding that border down. And those guys started teaching the rest of their little minions, their followers, special forces drills and knowledge and shooting and all that. Like it just became this little virus that the American government really started by teaching the special forces. Forces went over to cartel side. They worked for the cartel side, and they decided to make their own cartel, and then spread their knowledge amongst the minions. And them minions turned into multiple factions of cartels. So it was like a little cancer that grew.
Well, and another reason to have different factions or to want different factions is if one ever doesn't play ball or do what you want, you just go to another faction and have them wipe them out. So it's easy.
Yep, yep. That's pretty much it.
So yeah, and so they don't just give them like special forces training. And by the way, a lot of that's done at the School of the Americas at Fort Benning, Georgia, just so people know.
Yep.
Uh, anyway, I went through infantry school at Fort Benning, Georgia. I know about the School of the Americas and how we train basically terrorists there to do whatever we want around the world, whether it's Gaddafi, whether it's Saddam Hussein. We train and fund and arm all those people, and we do it just for the example he's given right here with these cartels. We did the same thing with them, and that's become one of the biggest, really richest armies in the world right now. Is those cartels. But we don't just give them that training. We also give them technology. We give them satellite equipment. We give them phone jamming techniques. We give them and these dogmen. If they have these dogmen, which are basically military super soldiers, is what they're trained and bred for. Just like if you listen to Victor on Jeff Nadalny's channel and his stories about creating programs where they train these dogmen to be super soldiers. They breed them in captivity and they train them. They even train them in infantry style tactics. So and they're very intelligent and they use these basically as super soldiers. Well, the only way that the cartels would have had access to these creatures is if it was the U.S. government and three-letter agencies that were giving them these creatures, because
Yep.
they're the only ones that have that kind of access.
Exactly right.
There's an old story in dogman communities that in the early stages of trying to weaponize and behaviorally control these creatures to be super soldiers, there was a underground military base in South America, and they said that four of these creatures got loose somehow and got to the surface, and they said within a few hours they completely slaughtered an entire town, slaughtered every person in the town, families, just four of these creatures. They had trackers in them, and they ended up sending out like specialized military forces to track them down, and they did. They used special weapons on them, and they were able to eliminate these four creatures finally. And then, you know what they did? They claimed that there was a gas leak that blew up the entire town. They just dropped the bomb on the whole place to destroy all the evidence. I've heard that story from at least 4 different sources. There's also another really famous story on the same lines, also when they were in the early programs of this, that you had all these military high brass and generals and stuff that were watching in this auditorium room, and you had like a big thick glass, like plexiglass or something, and on the other side they had one of these creatures, and they brought in a little girl, a little bitty girl, and they watched as this creature just ripped that girl to shreds. And they were all very pleased, according to witnesses, because they say one of the biggest problems with American troops and soldiers and even special forces is that we still have empathy. We have empathy. So there are rules we won't cross at times, and there are things, orders we won't do. And a lot of the leadership believes that that's a problem. That's why they want robots and creatures like this, because they believe that a better soldier, a super soldier, is one that has zero empathy.
Yep, that's 100% right. That's why whenever you go to the military, they'll ask you if you have a problem with shooting humans. What about a child? What about this? What about that? And there is a wrong and a right answer. If you
Yes.
got morals to you, chances are they're not going to want to pick you.
Yep. And we're living in a time where there's less and less morality. In fact, to tell you, when it comes to the Illuminati and destroying the world by taking it over, same thing. They're dividing and conquering all these different countries we see going on right now. But they realized they had to destroy the morality. By destroying the morality, that removes God's protection. And by removing God's protection, then they can do what it is that they want to us as a whole. And that's where we're at. That's where we're at. Um, I'm going to be doing a show soon about the visions and prophecies that God gave me about the future of the United States and the world that's coming, because we're right on the edge of a knife of those things, those events taking place right now. In fact, I was going to do that now till you called me yesterday, but I'm glad you did, because I've been wanting to get with you for a while. So that's we recapped Sancho's Dogman encounter and working with the cartels, and we covered who they work for, who they serve. Oh, by the way, let me ask you this: I heard rumors from some military contractors, special forces contractors, that said that there's one specific. I don't know if you call them a cartel, but like a kill team down there of special forces that are completely 100% like Satanists, satanic, but they're like a kill squad that's all Satanists. Have you heard anything about that?
Well, I wouldn't say Satan is more like drug addicts. Like if I know they experiment a lot of these drug
No,
cartels. They experiment with drugs,
they
and
said these guys are straight up. We perform satanic rituals before we do anything, right? And then they slaughter.
oh yeah, 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 yeah. I could see that happening because they do have a lot of saints that like Jesus Malverde. He's one of their saints of safe travel for narco traffickers. They
Who's
go
that?
down there. Huh?
Who's that?
His name is Jesus Malverde.
Madedede. Okay,
Malverde, yeah, and they pray and worship to him, and he's considered a saint in the Catholic Church down there, and he's the saint of safe travel for narco traffickers. So when they
right,
go across the border to protect them against the enemies, against the border patrol, against cops, and for the safe journey of basically the whatever he's carrying across the border.
right, dude. You just
And
reminded me a story that Vault told me recently. Um, um, Vault said he was at this. I hope he doesn't mind. I hope he doesn't mind if I put this out there. Normally he doesn't. But well, maybe I should ask him. Yeah, Vault. Vault ran into a little kid at a little Latino boy at like a hardware store, and his car had broken down. And Vault stopped and offered him a ride. And the little kid saw a tattoo that Vault had and flipped out because it reminded him something of his home village. That Vault may or may not have been a part of that came into all that kind of stuff. But I'll ask Walt if I could tell the full story before I go any further with it. I'll just throw that out there as a little teaser. But it's a crazy story about a mission that they had to do south of the border, and they made an impression, to say the least. And this kid recognized that. But anyway, I'll ask him if I can tell the full story before I go any further with that. But anyway, okay, so yeah, we covered the cartels. One thing I wanted to get into, so you told me one day what the transition was like, where you were like this high speed, fast lane, respected kind of cartel guy, almost like mafia type dude, who people feared and respected, and you went from that to just being like a plain Jane normal average dude, and it sucked.
Yeah. Well, they didn't. At first, it did suck, but now that I've settled down and I got my kid and my wife, and it really isn't that bad because whenever I was in it, I was like, people only see the glamorous side of things. I was having to move every 3 to 4 months from apartments, hotels, something I could just get up and get out of so quick because I would be followed by certain people. So I've had a couple of hits put out on me, been shot at a couple of times, and it's not pretty, especially when you got anxiety and claustrophobia. So
Yeah, that's what I meant. What I meant was like just the transition to go from one spectrum of life to the other. But you've come through that even further where you recognize that it's not about having the power or the respect or the glitz and glamour, as you say, but just having a simple wife and a child, and how that can be more rewarding to your life than just about anything else. Just having a little family, little wife,
oh
little.
yeah, oh yeah, any day. I wouldn't trade it for the world.
So that's awesome, and God really brought you through all that. And speaking of, can you say anything about how you got out, or would you rather not talk about that?
Oh man, I can do a little rundown of that. Well, the guy that brought me in, his I didn't like his boss. His boss was he was a multimillionaire. He was cocky. He was arrogant. He was an ass. And long story short, this guy ended up he started smoking crack out of nowhere, and we found out because payments were being made late, the merchandise wasn't being delivered on time. Then the big bosses start getting worried. Hey man, you're because like you only have a certain amount of time to pay up, and if you don't, death is going to come knocking at your door. They don't care if they get their payment; they're going to make an example out of you, so the next person doesn't try to do the same as they did.
Right.
Well, one day I told my friend, and I told him like, hey man, you need to go report to the bosses that your homeboy. I know that's your homeboy and everything. I said, but I'll be damned if I end up in a desert somewhere with a bullet in the back of my head because he refuses to follow orders and do what's right. Like you need to tell him down there that this guy he's smoking crack, he's using up all the money, he's not paying people on time, and that's just bad for business.
Right, because they'll
So
wipe out the whole crew, not just the guy, right?
yeah, yeah, because I said, man, because you know what? I said, because like if we don't, because like even if you run, I'm gonna tell you right now, if you run and you're in deep like I was, they'll come and find your family. And if you got kids, a mom, a dad, a brother, a grandfather, grandmother, you can't run with the whole family. So I tell people, don't. You better think about it before you join in, and knowing that you're putting other people's lives in danger. Well, when that happened and we told them what was going on, they ended up basically making a decision that his boss, the guy, my friend's friend, he had to die, and they wanted us to do it. And I'm like, oh man, what are we gonna do? What are we gonna do? I started panicking because, like I said, I wasn't in this to murder nobody or kill nobody. But then at that point, I had already accepted because, like, I'm gonna put my family before his. He chose his path, so now he's got to deal with the consequences. Well, the day before that all this was going to happen, because we had to set him up to get basically unalived, the day before that happened, the main guy down in Mexico, the guy that ran the whole organization, I mean, this is like the president of the United States down there where we're at, he got caught by the rival cartel, and basically everybody started scattering because at that point, when the main guy gets caught up, he knows where the money's going to, who's getting money, who's on the payroll, who's on everything. They know he's gonna snitch because they're gonna torture him till his last dying breath, and everybody he's gonna name people off. So by him getting caught, getting killed, and died, stopped us from having to basically unalive the main guy here in the United States for us. And that was my little, I guess, my free get out of jail card or get out of this because as soon as my friends started hiding and everybody started hiding, and I'm like, man, you know what? I'm not going back. Like, unless these people look for me, I'm not going back. And ever since that day, I haven't called them. They haven't. Nobody's reached out to call me. I don't go to that part of Mexico. I don't go to some parts of the United States, some cities, just just so I can avoid anything or anything from these people.
Right.
So I
Yeah.
took my little free get out of jail card and never turned back.
I really see for me, I really see the hand of God helping you through that whole situation. Because what people don't understand is it's blood in, blood out.
Yeah, yeah, it really is.
And to be able to get away with that with your life and to be able to go make another life, like having a wife and a child and discovering the great beauty in that kind of life. I mean, that's not something that a lot of these people have an option to be able to have once you're involved at those levels, right?
Right.
So yeah, that's really something. Um, so tell me this. One thing I wanted to cover was you told another. Now there are some people that, for whatever reason, craziness just seems to follow them. So some people are like, John, like, I think you're full of crap on your stories because you don't just have like one interesting story. You got like 100 or 200 interesting stories, and that's just not normal for any one person. I'm like, no, there's just some people that craziness just follows. So it actually happens like that a lot. Like Vault, that guy has been in high crazy his whole life. He went with he went with Pat to go stay in a cabin just on a vacation, like last year, and they started getting messed with by Bigfoot. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. Of all people in the world to start getting messed with a Bigfoot on a vacation in a cabin, it was Vault, and it just stuff follows people. So same thing with your story. It's no surprise to me that you've come across a lot of other high craziness, and that's some of the stuff I'd like to get into. One of them I want to get into it goes plays off of a show I did recently. People remember the show I did with Kimberly about the vampires, right? And
Right.
she told a story in there that she told me on the phone when I talked to her before the show. She was like, "Yeah, I talked to this guy who said that he saw this lady walking or guy or whatever person with two dogs, and but the dogs really creeped him out. They were very weird." And I was like, they wanted to talk to you, right? And so that's not what I'm saying, but I got the impression like they were trying to talk to me, that they wanted to say something. I was like, I knew it. And it was because of your story. So tell people about that.
So the one thing that the little vice that I had whenever I was in that lifestyle was always women. That was just my little Achilles tendon. Whenever there was nice women around, I was there. And in one of these meetings that I had, I ended up meeting this woman who I guess it was her husband, but honestly they weren't married. And she invited me over to this house where she was staying at, and I ended up going to go see her. We drank a little bit, had a little adult fun. And as I was coming out of that neighborhood, because they called it a Millionaire's Row, and it was shaped like a giant L. You go at the main gate is at the top of the L. You go down it, make a right, and her house was at the very end. So I'm leaving her house, and I'm gonna make my way up the stem of the L back out to the driveway, and I had to get out and pee. I'm like, man, screw it, I'm already here. It's about 2 o'clock in the morning, almost three. I get out of the car to go pee, and I'm peeing on somebody's front lawn there, and all of a sudden I hear this woof woof like a dog barking, and I mean that damn the sound of that dog was just reverberated through my back, like, holy Jesus, like that's a big dog. And like in my mind, I'm like, shut the fuck up. And I'm thinking that as I'm thinking that I hear is like, who are you telling to shut the fuck up? And I'm like, what? Like, did I hear that correctly? Did somebody just talk to me in my head? And I'm peeing and I hear these dogs barking and I'm like, man, what the fuck? I'm like, what's going on? I look around and I see these two Dobermans, um, bigger than a normal Doberman. Like I'm sitting here looking, they're on all fours. I'm looking like damn near eye to eye with these dogs. Had a red one and a black one. And all of a sudden they stand up and they look at me and I'm like, oh God, like what is this? And I'm like, I'm just freaking out because like I mean these things were jacked up. I mean you could see chest muscles, abs, biceps, triceps, and I mean these were the biggest Dobermans that like that, man, I mean it was just they were huge specimens in between 5 to 7, I mean between 6 to 7 feet tall. And I'm sitting there looking at them and one of them like I'm guessing it was the black one talks to me in my head and he's like, who are you gonna fuck up? What are you gonna do? And I'm just sitting there and somewhere within me tells me, get in the car and go. But I'm so scared because I'm looking at these things and I'm like, I'm just shocked. And I mean, I couldn't get my legs to move to get back in the car. And this thing's
Right.
telling me, he's like, who are you gonna fuck up? He's like, I could jump over this fence and I could kill you right now and hide your body and no one would. Like they're having this conversation and the red one's like, man, quit playing with him, just leave him alone. He's like, he's not gonna do shit. And I'm sitting there looking at him and they're just having a good old time. Look, the one in the black one is looking at me and he's really angry, like he wants to like just jump. I mean, he could have jumped over that fence easily. Like there was really nothing stopping him from jumping that fence and getting at me. And I'm just sitting there looking and I'm like just looking around with my eyes because that's about the only thing that I could move at this point. And on the second story of that house that was where these dogs were at, there was a guy kind of like in a robe looking at me. And I'm like, oh man, what the hell's going on? What is this? And I just kind of something snapped into me. He's like, hey man, get to moving, get out of here, because like while the getting's good. And I remember when I was leaving, I looked back at the dog. I remember they had these big old gold chains, like actual gold chain, like a Cuban link chain. I mean, but the thing was freaking huge.
Right.
And like
So
it was just weird, like who puts jewelry on a dog,
they had
you know?
bling. They had bling.
Yeah, they had bling, and I'm like, man, what the hell? And I don't know why in my mind, like I guarantee you, if these things were human beings, they were black people, because that's how they carried themselves and how they talked, and it seemed like these things, these things like knew what they were doing. Like they weren't scared to talk. They were having a sophisticated conversation. They were composing themselves like like man, I don't even know how to describe it. It was just a surreal experience for me that I can't even explain myself sometimes. And well, I got in the car and took off. And about 2 days later, I ended up getting a home delivery of roses, and it said please don't come back and don't fuck with my dogs. And at that moment, I knew it was that guy that I'd seen in that Millionaires Row.
If I remember right, I thought he called your work too.
Oh yeah, he did. He did do that too. He did do that too. Because at that time, I had to have a little side gig because I was starting to make a little bit of money. And my friend told me, he's like, hey man, you got to have a job in order to, because I wanted to start buying certain things, and I didn't have the credit. I didn't have like anything, any way to prove the money that I was making.
Right.
And I don't know how this dude found me because I had to rent a car that day. Like there's like usually rent a car places don't give out your information. I'm pretty sure unless you're the cops or somebody or higher power. He found
Right.
out who I was, where I worked at in my house, and was able to send, a bushel of roses to me and tell me, hey, you know what, don't come around here anymore. And I sure as
Leave
hell
my
didn't ever go
dogs
back to
alone.
that area.
Leave my dogs alone.
Yeah, that's pretty. He was taking a shot at me like, you know who I am. You already seen what you saw. Don't come back.
Right. Right.
So,
Yeah, that's crazy. So you heard the whole conversation just playing out in your head.
oh yeah,
And when this thing got mad at your comment, it stood up on two legs, and you realized how basically muscled out this thing really was.
oh man, oh yeah. Like there was no doubt. Like there's no human alive on this earth that could probably take that thing on one.
Right.
Like if I had to estimate, this thing probably weighed close to 300 pounds, a little over. I mean, this thing was huge.
Did you
Like you once they stand up, you could see the definition on them. There's no doubt what you're looking at.
right. Did you notice the any what the hands look like at all?
Yeah, they were pretty big, thick hands. Almost man could see the dogman they have, or the werewolves, whatever you want to call them. They have like a raccoonish type hand.
Yep, they look like raccoon hands. Yep.
Yeah, this one, their hands were like bear paws, but with a thumb. Like
But
they
what
had a big old paw with a thumb. Like it was just weird because like you could see their hands. Like it was almost like a boxing glove. You cut it up and you make thick fingers out of it and a big old thumb.
right. Yeah, that's wild, man. And you heard the dual conversation that they were having with each other. You heard all of that.
Yeah, the red Doberman was telling the black one like, man, just leave him alone. He's not gonna do shit, and he's just like, basically just trying to talk him out of it, but not really stopping it. Because like at any moment the black one could have just ran and jumped that 6 foot little gate. It was like one of those bar fences. You know what I'm talking about? Like they're like
Right, right.
quarter-inch bars. He
Yeah,
could have jumped that thing or ran through it. To tell you the truth,
right.
it
And
could
that
have.
and then you notice that they had bling on.
Yeah, yeah, it really did. I'm sitting there looking. I'm like, man, does that thing have a gold? It was a nice looking gold chain. I'm like, something that any cartel member would be proud to have around their neck.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So at that time, I started thinking about it. I'm like, man, if this guy's got him, like, who is this guy that he would have one of the or two of these animals guarding his house?
Right.
So
And see, that's the thing people don't understand. If our government has the technology to create the super soldier dogmen, imagine when they have the technology to create these variant creatures like these dogs that people wouldn't give a second glance to other than these are very massive dogs until they kind of really reveal themselves. They have that technology.
yeah, because I mean, I could tell you, like, I could see people looking at these things and never really thinking about them twice. Oh, I just saw a big wolf, like the size of a calf. Like, oh my god, it was so big, but I just kept going. But I guarantee, if you stuck around and waited for that thing to stand up, you'd like, hey, that's not what I'm looking at.
Right.
You know?
Right. That is wild. That is a wild story. But yeah, it goes back to what Kimberly was saying with the vampire interview where she said they came across these dogs and that they didn't have a conversation, didn't go that far, but just they were looking like with human eyes and got the impression that they wanted to and had the ability to communicate. See, there's a one thing I believe as human beings, we're all psychic. We all have psychic ability. Now, when I say that, I don't mean like palm reading or tarot cards and that kind of occult type trash that we should avoid. I'm just saying God created us where we share in the angelic nature. We're flesh and blood. We're physical and spiritual soul. And in such that we're soul, we share in the angelic nature. And angels, from the Thomistic tradition, they don't have physical bodies. They can create artificial bodies for temporary times, but in their natural state, they're pure spirits. So they don't have vocal cords or mouth to speak. So they speak through intuition. They speak through, for lack of a better word, a telepathic communication. So we have this ability. We're born with this. All humans are psychic. All humans get these feelings of, oh, this is a good situation. This is a bad situation. Like you were saying, you were given instructions to get out of there, right?
Mm-hmm.
See, that's it. That psychic is not a good term for that. In the government programs, they call it intuition, but that's your intuition. And I would say it's your guardian angel that's warning you to get out of there. There's 3 times in my life where my guardian angel saved my life by telling me not to do something before I did it. So,
Oh, I get those voices all the time. If I could tell people how many times, like even going like so. A lot of my friends, like on my Snapchat, they call me the Wreck King because I can literally go down the highway and I can witness three accidents and I'm cruising through between the accidents as cars are crashing, and I'll be posting them. And people are like, how do you see these wrecks happening full in front of you and nothing happens? Like, man, I don't know. I don't know. And that's been all my life that I can go
Yep.
down the road and people are like, well, I want to be in the car where you're at because you never get touched. And I mean, I'm telling you, I could see 3 or 4 wrecks a day, and that's just a normal day to me. And I'm usually with within striking distance or barely getting missed by a vehicle, but I always get this little voice in me, hey, get out of this lane, go to the next lane, get out of this, get this exit out, stop and fuel up right now. And that little voice has saved me so many times.
That
Don't go to
exact
that
thing
party.
happened to me. I was driving through Chicago one time, and there was a like it was in the middle of like a snowstorm, and I was approaching this exit, and a voice said, "Pull over right here and get gas." I didn't need to get gas. I mean, I could have, but I didn't. It wasn't at a point I needed. Felt like I needed to. This little voice said, "Pull off right here and get gas." So I followed that voice. I pulled off to get gas, and as soon as I pulled off on that little exit to get off the interstate, a major pileup happened that I would have been in the middle of.
That happened to me in Donner Pass between California and Nevada. Had the same exact thing. Something told me, go pull over and get gas. And sure enough, freaking about 10 car pileup. Boom, 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 boom. Right as I was pulling into the gas station within seconds. Boom, 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 boom.
Yep. They taught us in the police academy when I was training to become a state trooper. They taught us you listen to that little voice in your head because it will save your life. And I always tell people when I was a police officer, anytime I pulled a vehicle over, there was never a single time I didn't know if I needed to call backup before I even opened my door. Told me every time was never wrong. Now
I believe you.
there were times I didn't call the backup just because I wanted to get in a fight.
Yeah, I've been there. My friend, the one that got me involved into the drug game right before all this stuff happened, right after the old boy got killed in Mexico. He he still wanted to keep going. He's like, let's just do one more last run and get it out of the way. I backed out of it because I told him no. I said, there's something in me telling me not to do it. Don't do it. Don't do it. The other driver that he had completely backed out, and he said, all right, screw it. You know what? I'm just gonna do it myself. And lo and behold, within 2 days, he got caught with I think 20 pounds of 20 pounds of freaking what was it, crystal meth, because at the time they didn't have cocaine. He got caught
Right?
with 20 pounds of crystal meth, and yeah, that saved me right there. And that was another reason that I got out too. Right there, it's like that little voice has been telling me,
Yep.
get out, get out, get out. You need to stop while
Right.
the getting's good.
That's it. That's it. But you always have that temptation for that one more last try too. That's a big trap, you know. But yeah, man, I pulled over this vehicle one night, and this guy gets out, and he's calling me. He's like, "Hey, governor, governor, governor." So I knew he was from England, right? Even though he was a black fella from England. The guy was like 6'3", 6'4", really tall, muscular but skinny. And I tell you, you ever been involved in fights? The hardest people to fight are tall, skinny people because they have all the leverage, and you got to take hits to get on the inside. So I'm like 5'10". So I always struggle with those guys like boxing and stuff like that, or even martial arts, tournaments and stuff. But anyway, I pull this guy over, and that little thing's ringing in my head saying, "You're going to need to call backup, call backup. It's going to be a fight." And I hadn't fought in a while, and I'm like, well, I want to keep sharp. So I was like, I'm just going to fight. And he's wearing a jacket that says 4-time all world wrestling champion. All right. So I'm giving him a field sobriety test. He decides at one point he's just going to take off and just quit and do his own thing. People feel like once they get to their house that they're on base, that they're safe, right?
Yeah.
So this guy starts opening the door. I'm calling him back to the house. I'm calling him back. So finally I go tackle him, and we roll into the kitchen, and we're fighting in the kitchen. Man, I'm trying to everything they taught us in the academy to do, because that's all legally we're allowed to do. I did an arm bar takedown, which is like a number one police move. This guy picks up my entire body with one arm in the air. my entire body with all my weight, with all my gear, all my equipment. It just picks me up like I'm nothing off the ground. And I'm like, okay, this isn't working. And then this other guy starts walking in the living room in his underwear saying, "What's going on in here?" And I was like, all right, starting to get real, right? So I said, stop. I said, you take another step and you're going to be a holy man. And I put my hand on my gun and the guy goes and freezes. And then I kicked this guy's leg out from under him. I sweeped him and then I put him in a rear naked choke, which you're not supposed to do that in law enforcement. But something else they taught us in law enforcement, if nothing else works, do what you got to do and then apply what you're taught to do. And so
Yep.
it was working. I couldn't get this guy under control. So I put him in a rear naked choke and I finally got him to the point where I could cuff him. And just then I'd call for backup. The sheriff's office rolls up 5 units deep and they come in all full of adrenaline. What's going on? What's going on? What's going on? And I'm like, oh, I already got it. And they're like, oh, man. But look, I take this guy down to the police station and I'm doing the paperwork and giving the breathalyzer and all that stuff. And he goes, hey, man, he's like, you ever seen that movie Over the Top with Sylvester Stallone? And I'm like, come on, don't tell me you were in that movie. He said, next time you watch that, see who the referee is in the last scene. So sure enough, I'm off the next day. So what am I doing? Paperwork on my day off. It takes what comes on TNT on television, Over the Top with Sylvester Stallone. By the time I finish my report, it's the end of the movie. And sure enough, he was the referee in the last scene of the movie.
Damn. Man, when you told me that, I have a friend who's a truck driver, and this dude's 6'8", black guy, about close to 300 pounds, but he's a big old boy, not a small guy by any means.
Right.
And he was up in the East Coast, and he doesn't believe in any of this stuff. And I usually try to talk to him because I've known this guy since we were in kindergarten, second grade. You know, we go way back. And he gets home one day and he's like, "Hey, come over. You know, talk to me. Let's have a beer." He's like, "I got something I got to tell you." So I go over there and he's like, "Man, I got into a fight." I'm like, "Okay." Like, you could have told me that before. He's like, "No, no." He's like, "You have to listen to this." He goes, "I was up there on the East Coast and I pulled into this little trucking diner spot." He goes, "I walk in there." He's like, "It's about 11 o'clock at night, about to get something to eat." And he's got these 3 like redneck dudes just in there sitting and they're looking at him and he's like, whatever. He doesn't care, doesn't pay no mind. So they start cracking black jokes at him, and they start, little by little they start adding on to see, how much racial pressure they could put on him before he snaps.
They're trying to provoke him.
Yeah, try to provoke him. And he says the main one was this dude. He was about 5'8", 5'9". He goes about 150, 160 pounds. And he's like, "Hey boy, where you coming from? Hey boy, you want some of this? Hey boy, you want?" And it was just, "Hey boy this, hey boy that." And he's like, "I'm just trying to not focus on this kid." And he's pissing me off. He's like, "Cause I don't want to hurt him." Well, long story short, he basically gets under my friend's skin, and then he's like, he gets up and he starts walking out, and he's like, "What?" He's like, "You can't handle this." He's like, "I'm walking out for your safety." He's like, "If you follow me out here, I'm gonna hurt you." So this dude follows him out, him and his 2 friends, and he's already up under his skin. He follows him damn near to his truck, and he tells him, like, "Look, dude, if you don't fucking leave me alone right now, I'm gonna end up hurting you." And long story short, he goes, "Well," he's like, "Fuck it." He's like, "I just took a swing at this kid." He goes, "Man," and I pulled back with everything I had, and I hit this kid, and I sent him flying like 5 or 6 feet, from where he stood. And he's like, "I thought I broke his jaw," and this kid just gets up and looks at him and shakes it off, and he goes, "Is that all you got?" And he comes at him again, and he hits him 2 or 3 more times and just lays into him. And he's like, "Dude, I was hitting him with some big shots that should have laid this kid out."
Right.
And he goes, "That didn't happen." He goes, "He came back about the second time." He's like, "I picked him up and slammed him on the ground. I mean, with everything I had." And then he said that the kid stood up. He goes, "All right." "I let you get your little free shots into it." He's like, "Now it's time for my turn." And he goes, and he goes, "Nigger time, bashing time." And then he goes, all of a sudden, I looked at this kid's face, and he goes, his eyes slitted like vertically up and down.
Oh,
I mean, side to side, like he goes, like if it was a snake.
like reptilian. Yeah.
There you go, yeah. And he's like his eyes changed to like cat eyes, and they slitted and they blinked like horror, like vertically. I'm sorry, vertically.
Right.
And he goes,
Like
and
in Men in Black. And
Yeah, yeah,
the
yeah,
black
yeah,
movie.
like that. And he goes out of nowhere. This kid, he's like, he took a big, deep of breath air, and he gained about 30 pounds of
Yeah,
muscle. This kid grew, and everybody's sitting there looking at me. I mean, he said this kid ran. He goes, and he used to play college football too. He goes, man, this kid ran into me. It's like it felt like a small truck hit him.
right.
And they
And then
started fighting. He goes, man, dude, I was in it for the fight of my life. He goes, this kid was just throwing me around like there was no tomorrow. And he
how
goes,
much did your buddy weigh?
huh?
How much did your buddy weigh?
About 300 pounds.
So 300 pounds is getting taken to school by 130, 150 pound kid.
About one, he said, man, he goes, when he was in the diner, he couldn't have been more than 150, 160. He goes,
For
man, it
people
was
that don't know, as far as weight classes and fighting, I mean, 300 pounds is a major heavyweight. A lot of heavyweights are like, just above 200, and he's fighting like a welterweight or even featherweight at being 100 below 150. So normally that's not a chance in hell.
yeah. And he's like, man, this kid, like, he goes, it felt like a small truck was just slamming me everywhere. He's like, I couldn't move this kid anymore. He's like, it felt like I was just grabbing steel and trying to fucking slam it and hit it. He goes, like, I don't know what. He's like, I didn't know what to do. He goes, he's like, we were on the ground and I basically kicked him off me. He's like, with both legs. And he goes, and even that took some force to do. He's like, man, he goes, I got up and he's like, I had a small 380 on me. And I ended up pulling out and like put it on him. I'm like, look, bro, it's like, if you come at me again, I'm gonna just put two in your head right now or wherever it land. And the guy was like, oh, now you wanna, pull a gun out on me, you're losing. He's like, look, man, I just want to get the hell out of here. Leave me the fuck alone. And, you go your way, I go my way. And he basically got in his truck and he took off. And when he took off down the road, he got pulled over by a cop. And before he got pulled over, he said he threw the gun out. And the cop told him, hey, he's like, hey, man, what you did back there was pretty stupid. He goes, that kid back there, he's like, he's been known to do that. He's like, I would just, if you ever go into these situations, don't stop. He's like, just pay him no mind. He goes, he's like, you're lucky he didn't damn near kill you. So that kind of brought back that story to me. And he told me that like 8 years ago when that happened to him.
That's wild, man. You remind me. I went to Bronson to L.A. Marzulli, who I interviewed on my channel. I went to one of his conferences with Stephen Quayle and the great Tom Horn, who's passed away since. I sat right behind Tom Horn at the conference. I was so excited. But anyway, they told a story there about a Christian man who went out on a date with this woman, and she was a really beautiful, attractive woman, and they had a nice date. They went out to dinner, and afterwards, she invited him to come into like her apartment or whatever, and he said they started like kissing and stuff like that on the couch and all that. He said, but then all of a sudden they stopped and they were looking at each other for like a momentary pause or something. And he said her eyes slit like that. And he pushed her back. He's like, what the hell are you? And she smiled and started acting like really aggressive, and he got scared. And he ran out of there, and they were telling the story about this. So saying that, it was some kind of reptilian woman. So yeah, another big thing that people are seeing now is like the black-eyed kids. Now they're seeing black-eyed adults too. Like
Uh-huh.
I saw in a video in a courtroom one time where this guy's on the stand giving testimony, and like some lawyer in the front row, their eyes turn completely black, you know. And there's hundreds of stories of people's eyes doing that, even temporarily. Now, for that, I think it's probably like some type of demonic possession thing. But for those slitting eyes, man, that sounds like some kind of reptilian thing. And whatever
Yeah.
that kid was, that's not normal.
Yeah, because he said he gained. I said that he said when that kid breathed in really good, he said like he grew about like 30 pounds of muscle just came up out of nowhere. Like he just swelled up. Like he's like I've never seen that before. I wouldn't know. And he's like, what do you think that is? I'm like, bro, I couldn't tell you. I've never like that's the first time I ever heard anybody say that.
The
That
the only thing I've heard about reptilians is they claim that they have an ability to put out some type of frequency. I don't know if it's a natural ability or if it's a technology, but they can put a frequency out that can emit a frequency that alters the perception of what you see. So it could be something that's not even human at all, but you're seeing a human. You see what I'm
Uh huh.
saying? Or
Yeah,
this
you're right.
this kid could have been putting out a frequency that he's a little kid when he's not. You know what I mean? So I don't know, and that's just I'm just throwing out.
You're
Um,
right. You're right. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I've heard
but
that.
but I'm trying to come up with some way that that could be possible. I have never heard a story where someone breathes in and just gets bigger.
Yeah,
But it's hard pressed to surprise me at all in the world today with all the high craziness we have going on. Hey, before we get much further, let's go over the incident with the tunnels. Can you tell people about that?
yeah, yeah, yeah. So, a couple months ago, and then the work that I do now, we do a lot of heavy transporting, and it's like 18 wheelers, but on steroids. We have these convoys that are just huge, that block off traffic, that require police escorts, utility companies to move power lines up or take them all completely down, remove stop signs, road signs, because they're so freaking huge that it's not normal loads, and they take days, even months to deliver. And we picked up to this capacitor. And for those of you who don't know what a capacitor is, those are those big things on the power lines that if they blow up or they make this huge explosion, all the all the um, all the electricity in that area basically goes out.
Yeah,
And
transformer.
yeah, transformer. There you go, transformer. And those usually weigh about 2 to 300 pounds, 500 pounds for the big ones. Well, this one weighed 100,000 pounds. That's how big this bad boy was. It's 25 feet tall, 22 feet wide, and about 60 feet long. That's how big this transformer was.
Wow.
And so we picked it up in Oklahoma, and we are delivering it to Chicago. And between Chicago, like on the borderlines of Chicago, is where we delivered it at. And when we delivered it into like a small mountain, hillside, whatever you want to call it. And it was a tunnel into the mountain or the hill that we delivered into. And we didn't know till we got there, and they had army personnel escort us through these tunnels. And we drove for about 30, 40 minutes into this tunnel to deliver
Wow.
to deliver it. And there was light, fresh air. It was nice and cool. And the whole time we were driving through the mountain, we didn't see any electrical wires and any light bulbs.
Yep, I've heard that many times. In fact, I've heard rumors back from my military unit. Some of those guys had rumors going around about access and underground military bases, and they were saying, "Hey, man, some crazy stuff was going on down there. Like, they had machinery. Everything was electric. Vehicles, even like they had bulldozers and stuff, and even those were all electric. And they had hand tools like drills and saws, and those were all electric. But they never had to plug them into a battery. They never had to recharge them. They just had like a almost like they had an antenna, and they just automatically recharged. You never had to plug them in a wall. And they said that they had lights everywhere. Everything was well lit, but you never could see where the lights were coming from, you know,
Nope.
in certain parts. Other parts would be like normal, but in some parts you could not see where the lights were coming from. And some of them said you couldn't see shadows like on the walls.
Yeah, no shadows. No shadows for sure.
No shadows. So you want me to roll that footage?
Yeah, go for it. Go for it.
So Sancho took some footage of this that he sent me, and let me show you guys.
Look, meow. See, that's a mountain up there. And if you could tell, they're digging into that bitch. It's right there. And then over there, they have it sealed off, and there's quite a few of them going down this road. But yeah, bro, they're digging into this mountain. Like, that's fucking weird, bro.
Oh, didn't you show me a video before where you're actually driving down the tunnel?
Man, that's weird because I did send it to you, and it was on my phone, and it's no longer on my phone.
Oh man, see, okay, so you sent that to me. I saw it, and I was like, "Wow, this is some crazy footage." But when I was preparing for the show today, for the life of me, I could not find that video anywhere.
Yeah, yeah, and I sent it through my second phone, which it's only dedicated for work and this kind of stuff. And like, there's no way it's not saved on my phone. It's not saved in the message that I sent to you. It's not saved in the email that I sent. Like, how is this not on there?
And it's
If I
not on
sent
my
it.
phone, not on my phone either now. But I saw it. Yeah, he sent me. That's the video I thought I was playing, not this one. But the video, because I asked him, I said, I can't find that video. Can you resend it? And so I posted this one. But the video he showed me before was video he was taking as they were actually driving down inside this tunnel. So
Yeah, that's weird. Like, and I don't know what happened because I sent it to another friend of mine, and it's not there either. Like, because I remember who exactly I sent it to or what I send people. So I was like, oh, did you get it from that text message or from that email? And nope,
right,
not there
you know,
anymore.
I don't, I don't think people are actually aware of the level of AI and censorship that we actually have going on in our world right now. Just like any channel like mine, I get content creators. I get people who have other big shows that are like, John, man, how in the world is your show like not blown up? Is it so small in numbers? And it's because they're shadow banning me because of the stuff I talk about. I mean, hello, I'm telling you, these people are evil and don't trust your government, and they're behind everything, including child trafficking. So yeah, you could see why that they wouldn't like that. Not only that, pointing out things in the media that aren't true or we're being manipulated from, or they're not telling us. So the level of censorship's insane, and I've had multiple fans write to me and say, "Hey, I keep getting kicked off your channel. I got to resubscribe over and over, and I don't know. I'm getting tired of resubscribing every time, kind of thing." So yeah, and on oftentimes when I get new subscribers, 24 hours, the same number is taken back off again. So whereas when I had my old show, and this is a lot better than my old show, and the content I've put on here, um, I was over 5,000 people at least by now, easy. Um, so yeah, I don't think people understand. So even stuff like that with the phones, they have AI now running all this stuff, and if they come across stuff like that that they think is sensitive information, then they're going to have it removed. And not only that, they removed it from your phone, they removed it from my phone, they removed it from your buddy's phone. So that's the level of what we're dealing with now. That's also why, there have been times where I've come across or people have sent me like really good videos on stuff, like nurses talking about stuff that they've witnessed. And I'm like, well, it's late, so I'll send that out tomorrow morning. And then come tomorrow morning, it's gone. Like it's not there. And that's happened to me a few times. So one thing I've learned is if you have something that's really good, something really important, send it out to as much people as you can, as fast as you can, so it can get out there before it gets taken out. But just like they've got blockchain on crypto, I think this AI uses a blockchain. So once it has the source of the information, it can find anywhere it's gone to or it's been sent to, and then it just erases it off of all those devices that it has access to. All these phones have access to internet connections, and especially with the 5G stuff now, which is that on steroids. So, by the way, little public announcement: 5G phones uh, are very dangerous radiation. There's many engineers that are talking about this. Don't take my word for it. I'm not an engineer, but go listen to what some of these engineers are saying. They're saying it can be dangerous technology. So look into that because we all want to be good and healthy. I stick with 4G devices. I don't use the newer stuff. It uses a different type of radiation, and some engineers are saying that it's much different and can be harmful. So just look into that. Do your own research. I just put out that little warning just for people. But anyway, Sancho, tell me about the story of the something calling your name in the woods.
Oh, man, as a matter of fact, that was on the same load. That same load that I just sent you about going in the tunnels. It was about a week into it
Let me,
when
let
we
me stop
picked up.
you. Let me
Huh?
stop you real quick. Let me stop you real quick. One thing I forgot I wanted to say is you just reminded me when you mentioned going in those tunnels. people, you got to understand, what are they doing with these tunnels? All right. It was estimated that there was 140 underground military bases across the United States, and there's a famous Christian scientist named Stan Deyo who worked for Hal Puthoff, I believe, if I remember correctly, in the United States, and they sent him to Australia. And in Australia, he worked in an underground military base, partially created by the U.S. government, along with the Australian government, and he said he worked on UFO technology. And he got mad and wanted to go public about this place, and his life was in danger. And he went on the run across Australia, and until he could finally make his way back quietly to the U.S. But a friend of mine has interviewed him. I'm going to see if I can't try to get him to come on if he's much older now. If he still will do interviews, and see if I can't get him to come on and tell that story. But the whole point of this is there's 140 or worse, probably over 200 underground military bases in the US. One problem here is many whistleblowers have come forward to say the government is planning to take us to World War III that will destroy the United States, will destroy our infrastructure, our society, everything. And the elites, the power elites, plan to go hide in the bunkers that the government's created. So they're going to go hide in the bunkers while they leave the rest of us to fend for, you know, whatever's remaining after disaster. And I'll be getting more into that when I do my show about the prophecies the Lord told me about the future of the U.S. But that said, that's what they're planning. And what Sancho is talking about right here is they're doing last minute preparations to stock these things before they start like sealing them up. You know what I'm saying? What I'm saying is our time is limited. Sancho, in anything you did or any scuttlebutt you might have heard talking to guys, did you hear anything that might collaborate what I just said at all?
Yeah, it is funny how you say that because they say once they build those mountains that they seal them back up because they're only temporary because like they'll put like these big like what do you call it, those stone barriers in front of it so you can't just drive up in there.
Right.
And the second you walk into that tunnel, they know they have sensors, they have all kinds of stuff. And I mean, if it took us 30, 40 minutes to drive down there at 55 miles an hour, how long do you think it's going to take you to walk down there?
Right. Yeah.
So,
That's huge inside of that
yeah.
tunnel. That's crazy. Okay, I just wanted to throw that point out there. So you said that the voices happened with the same shipment connected to this.
Yeah. So we picked up, like I say, we picked up in Oklahoma and we were near the Choctaw Reservation and we ended up getting a hotel because at the end of every shift, we always end up in a hotel in a different city because the trucks we're only able to run a certain amount of time because of our electric logs, that truckers have to keep. And
Right. Right.
so we ran out because we drove all the way to Oklahoma, picked up that load, and we ended up going to the hotel, which was on the north side of the Indian reservation. And got up early that morning because I usually get up early, and it was we carry these trucks that basically they're like F-750s. They're like small 18 wheelers that have trailers that hooked up to them, and they carry extra tires, extra belts, extra oil, extra water, hydraulic lines, anything that we could use if the main trucks break down or the trailer breaks down. That we have the parts that we need to get them back up and going. Because like I
Right.
mean, when you break down, you're taking up 2 lanes of traffic or basically the whole highway. And so I get up early in the morning, go do my pre-trip, check the oils and everything on the truck, go around with the little sledgehammer beating all the tires and make sure we got air. And we parked on the backside of the hotel, and the backside of the hotel I didn't know was the Chickasaw Reservation. And I'm sitting there walking around towards the back of the truck, and I'm beating the tires, and I hear this voice of somebody screaming help in the woods. And but it wasn't like a regular human voice. It sounded real sheepish and groggy at the same time, kind of like help, 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 like it was struggling to breathe or something. and it's screaming it pretty loud. And I take my flashlight, and I got a freaking 8,000 lumen flashlight, and I'm shining in the woods trying to see something. And I'm like, "Where are you? What's going on? Help! Help!" Screaming and yelling. And I'm like, "Man, I don't know what's going on. Like, I don't know what kind of mountain lions, cougars. I don't know what's on these backwoods of Oklahoma." And well, really quick, they have a tiger sanctuary that was only like an hour and a half down the road, from what I heard, and they had a couple of tigers that got loose about last year. And I'm like, I'll be damned if I go in the woods and there's a fucking tiger in there that's, like, no, I'm not going out being tiger food. So I go inside the hotel, the front lobby, and there's a native guy. And I tell him, like, "Hey, sir," I go, "there's somebody back out in the back of the woods screaming for help and asking for help." And I'm like, "Man, I'm like, you need to call paramedics and the cops." And he's just typing on the computer. I go, "Hey, bro, did you not hear me? Like, hey, there's somebody back there screaming for help." And he goes, "Sir," he goes, "if I were you, I would just leave that alone." He goes, "Whatever that is back there calling and asking you for help," he goes, "it's not human. Trust me." He goes, "If you go back there and looking for it," he's like, "they're going to be looking for you." He goes, "So if I were you, I would just ignore it, do what you got to do, and move on about your day." He goes, "The police aren't going to come investigate it. So if I were you, I wouldn't even worry about it." Just like that, and continue to type on his little computer. And I'm like, well, if he doesn't care, the cops don't care. Why? What I'm saying? I'm not about to put my neck out there for him. So I basically just jump in the truck, start it up, drive to the front of the hotel on the other side of the road, and do my pre-trip over there. I'm like, I'm not like, you don't got to tell me twice.
Right, right. No, but that's an important point, an important story because people don't realize I've heard hundreds of stories exactly like that. And especially you hear a lot of them coming out of Tennessee, people that live in like the Appalachians and stuff. They can
Mm-hmm.
tell you growing up there, if you their children are taught in Appalachians that if you ever hear someone calling your name from the woods and crying for help, you don't go. And they said you don't even respond to the voice. And they also say don't blow whistles and things like that. But they tell all the children there if you hear things calling your name in the woods, do not come. I remember I saw this one video that was put on TikTok one time, and it was crazy. This guy was on his porch with like a shotgun or something, and his wife behind him. You could hear her talking, and there was like there's some like manicured grass, and then about 10, 20 feet away, there was some higher unmanicured grass. And from right there in that spot, you heard this raspy, strange little voice saying like, come out and play, come out, come here, come out and play. And this guy on the porch is like, I don't know what the hell you are, but you better get the hell off my property because I'm going to kill you. And dude, it
Yep.
was creepy. Like you could hear it. The guy recorded or the wife recorded it and they put it online, but I'm telling you, it made all the hair on the back of your neck stand up. It was scary. And
Oh,
I
when that guy was screaming for help, man, I thought like it just made my the back of my hair stand up all the way to my tailbone, and I'm like, man, this guy is really hurt. Like the way he sounded, like,
right.
and well, like I said, I couldn't see nothing with my flashlight and 8,000 lumens. Like, hey, bro, like you come to the light or tell me where you're at. But he just kept yelling help. You know what? Also, now I thought about it. A couple days after that trip, I was watching that a Predator movie, and it's the one where they take a bunch of like criminals and they put
Oh,
them on this farm.
predators. Predators with an S, plural.
Yeah, that one.
Tony Robert Rodriguez.
Yeah, and they where that Predator caught that guy Danny Trejo, and he was supposed to have been like a cartel member, and
Right.
he
Do you
was
know he
screaming for help.
was a real life inmate before he started getting into movies?
Yeah, he was a Golden Glove box winner too. Yeah,
Yeah, it was.
and but they used him as like bait, and he was sitting there screaming for help. And they're like, he's like, "Stop! Don't go near him!" And they threw something, and booby traps went off. I like, man, that like how weird that something like that happened to me.
That's a
And then
special
I'm
force.
watching,
A special forces trick they teach you.
yeah, and it's weird. I'm like, cause when I used to work in Appalachia too, back like 10 years ago, they said the same thing. Like whenever you're hiking through the woods, and I interviewed a couple of people, and I've been to the desolate parts of Appalachia, where like the poorest people live, where they got no electricity, no running water. He's, just backwoods people that time forgot about. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, they taught us, and that was a little trick, a little special forces trick they taught. You don't kill a person, you wound them, maim them, and then when their buddies go to try to save them, you pick them off one at a time. And he's like, that way a smaller element can destroy a much larger element. But yeah, it was a trap.
Mm-hmm.
And when you
Yep.
first told that story, the first thing I thought of was that scene in Predators. I just didn't say it. That was wild though. With Tony, Robert Rodriguez, I'm saying Tony from because I was talking about him last week. Robert Rodriguez was the director of that film, and that was a good film. That was crazy. It was wild.
Yeah,
But
yeah. You make a point, and like I said, it was just like sometimes a lot of people are like, why does this stuff never happen to me? I'm like, it just does. You're just not aware of it. Sometimes people like they'll hear something or like a kid screaming or something, and instead of investigate, just show, well, I don't know, there's no kids around here. Like, oh, it's just a kid screaming. I'm like, no, chances are there really wasn't a kid screaming. That was probably just something trying to set you up for failure to go out there and investigate.
it's a trap, right? I I lost my train of thought. I completely lost my train of thought. But yeah, anyway, I forgot what I was going to say. I had something I was going to say, but listening, I forgot it. But yeah, it's crazy. There are many, many stories. Like there was one story I heard one time of a guy said he lived in a trailer with his sister out in the woods. He was in the former military, and he just gotten out the military, and he was trying to get on his feet and get settled, and he lived out on and lived in this trailer and in the woods. And one night, they both woke up hearing someone calling, like a woman or something, screaming for help. So he ran out. He grabbed, I think he grabbed his gun or something, but he ran out in the woods. And he said next thing he knows, he's surrounded by like a pack of dog men that are staring him down. And he's like, he's at that like oh shit level. You know what I mean?
Uh
And
huh.
he said that he didn't know what to do. He said they didn't act aggressive at all, but he just slowly started backing out of there. And he said he kept his eyes on him and didn't turn his back. He slowly walked out of there. But he said that happened. But I've heard many tales, and I haven't heard many dogmen stories like that. Although many claim that the dogmen, like Bigfoot, both have an ability called infrasound. And there's a story one time, I think it was on Jeff's channel, where this guy was said he was riding a dirt bike, and he was like a bicycle dirt bike, not like a motorcycle. And they're riding mountain bikes, bicycles. And these two guys were trying to keep up with their friend who was like a pro rider. And the rule in their little community is you never lay your bike down, you never stop, you always
Mm-mm.
keep going. You're right. And so they couldn't keep up with the professional guy. So, but they were trying their best. Well, this one guy is trying to approach the pro guy, and he says he finds the pro guy not only stopped with his bike on the ground, but he's taking all his clothes off. And as he's taking his clothes off, he's folding the clothes into like a neat little pile, like folding the shirt, folding the pants, kind of thing, setting the shoes aside, like all neat. And this guy says, "Dude, what are you doing?" And he says, "Man, I'm really, really just hot." And he says, "I want to crawl into that little creek right there just so I can cool off because I'm too hot." And the other guy said, "Dude, I don't know what you're talking about." He says, "There's no creek right there." He says, "There's a giant, massive wolf that's growling at you." He says, "There's no creek, there's no water. It's a giant growling wolf, like an unnaturally large wolf."
Well,
And
when
that
you
was
say
that
that,
dude's story.
I think I told you what happened to me in Mexico. What that tiger hit me with that growling thing. Dude,
Yeah,
that shit. Like this guy had a couple tigers, and I stood in front of this freaking cage, no more than 10 feet away, and this thing's like for some reason like. So if you spot a tiger, that's why those people wear those masks in the back of their head so the tiger doesn't like they don't like the chase, they don't like the fight. They just their thing, their mo is go in there, quick kill, blow to the back of the neck, and just sever the
even in the
cord.
military, you always have cat eyes on the back of your hat,
Yeah.
glowing cat
So if you spot a tiger, chances are nine times out of 10, like even if you're only 10 feet away, if you spot them before they get, they'll just leave you alone because they don't want to get hurt. Like they're 100% of not getting hurt. Like
It's
that's their whole hunting.
the same with sharks. As long
Yeah.
as you stare them in the eye, they tend to keep their distance. If they try to come in, you can push them away. But they'll go away and try to sneak up underneath you or behind you and then
Well,
attack.
well, when I'm sitting there looking at this thing eye to eye, and this thing's looking at me, and like you could tell, like all of a sudden I could just feel this vibration like coursing through my body, and like I just felt like this heat just come to me, like where I just wanted to take my clothes off. Like, oh my god, it's freaking hot, like unbearably hot. I don't know where that came from, how they do it, but I mean, then I'm like, what the hell's going? Like, what do I feel like that? He's like, oh man, you got hit with that. I don't know.
Infrasound.
Yeah, infrasound. But in Spanish, I can't even remember how he's pronounced it. But he goes, yeah, you got to watch out. These things, they have a weird way of hunting.
It's a low frequency, and sometimes it's not even audible to the ear. Other times it sounds like a humming or growling, but sometimes it's silent, and it's called infrasound. And it's well documented that tigers, especially, have this ability, and it's a predatory ability. And what it does is it paralyzes the prey so that you can attack it and kill it. And now it has different effects on different people. Some people, it will disorient them. Some people, it will freeze them and they just can't move. Some people just become sick. Like all of a sudden, I'm nauseous and throwing up and dizzy. So there's different types. And then amongst Dogman and Bigfoot stories, there are hundreds and hundreds of tales of examples where that they displayed infrasound. All right. And that reminds me, if I can find this real quick, a friend of mine sent this picture to me recently from a trail cam. Check this out. Look at that.
Yeah, yeah, something I don't want to see in an alleyway or in the woods for sure.
A buddy of mine in intelligence sent this to me. Right. Consequently, another woman I saw posted the same picture on another site somewhere. Um, but he said that this came off of a trail can and was eating something like a deer carcass. So, but look at that. Look at the. What if you came across something that looked like that out in the wild, or at night, Very, very scary. And speaking of, you gave me some other photos. We might as well use that as a segue to get into some of them. Um, Here's a photo that Sancho sent me of a Bigfoot print. A friend of his sent him in the snow. Look how big that thing is.
Yeah, that was taken by my friend out in Arizona. She's a woman, Native American, out there by the reservation near the Grand Canyon. Like she lives by the Grand Canyon now, but the reservation is out there in Arizona. And she sent me back these pictures. She was out four wheeling one day, and she's like, "Look at this! Like, what do you think that is?" I'm like, "Chances are it's probably a Bigfoot print."
Yep.
And that's a 12-inch ruler that she has right there by it. And I told her,
Mhm.
like, because she wanted to follow the prints that led into the mounds. And I'm like, if I were you, I'd just leave it alone. I go, man, you're only 5'2", and you and your son wouldn't stand a chance to that thing, even if you were on your four wheeler. Like that, you're not outrunning that thing.
And like something you said earlier when we talked, is these Bigfoots are very territorial.
Oh
So,
yeah,
and odd thing about Bigfoots is it's like bears. If you study bear, I love animals. Right, I've got a big love of animals. I've said how before. I wish was like a zoologist or microbiologist or just or a marine biologist rather. I just love animals and nature. I try to learn as much about them as I can. When you study bears, bears have very interesting personalities. You never know what you're going to come across when you come across a bear. Like for example, you can come across a bear that's just friendly. You can come across a bear who's just curious. You can come across a bear that is hungry. You can come across a bear that just wants to kill you because you're there or you're a human. I mean, you never know. And it's the same with Bigfoots. There's many stories of people getting attacked just because they were in the wrong place, the wrong time, or territory issue. But also, there are stories where Bigfoots have saved people as well. But here's another photo. Now, this is a really interesting photo. No, well, going back to the first photo, notice how you have the heavier heel indention with more weight. before you have the front of the foot. So I thought that was interesting. Going back to this set of tracks, for people that don't know, if Vault was in the room tonight, uh, I think he was here maybe last time, but he's not here this time. Um, but Vault is like an expert tracker of these things. Like expert. When I say expert, I mean they're expert tracker of these things. He could tell you everything about it. But anyway, notice this. You see how these tracks are in a single line? That's how Bigfoots walk. They often walk in single lines, just like that. That is something that you will hear, not always, but very often. You'll hear the same story of them walking in single lines, just like that. So tell me about this.
Give me 1 second, man. I got people blowing me up right now. I'm just sending a message. Um, so that right there, I was that right there was in the south part of Texas. I mean, southeast part of Texas. And well, when I was working in the oil fields, I would get on these lines, and I would, get on the. I would follow the Bigfoot community pages. They'll have them up, and um, I asked if anybody wanted, sit down and talk and have any of these conversations about the experiences. And I had this one guy, only guy that responded to me. He's all like, "Hey man, let's go out here and let's have a talk." And we went out to the Sam Houston National Forest where there's a lake out there, and we're walking around, and he brought his four wheeler or side not four wheeler side by side, and we're cruising around through the national forest, and he takes me to where this sign is at, and he's like, "Look up and look at it." And I mean, right there, and I've been through this road quite a few times, and I've never seen this sign until he pointed it out to me, and he's all like, "Look it right there. It's a controversy." And for those of you who don't know what that is, that's basically a Bigfoot sanctuary, or not. I mean, it could be a controversy for any animal, but it says North American. What is it? North American wood ape conservation. And
Right,
that means there's no North American wood apes. That's a freaking Bigfoot if you can blow it up right there in the
right.
left hand corner. And
That's real
come to
big.
find out, the laws right there in that area, you cannot go in there with any kind of firearms whatsoever. That is a big no-no.
Hmm.
I wonder why.
Right. That a lot of people aren't aware. There's actually states that have laws written in the state that you cannot shoot a Bigfoot.
Oh yeah, that's a federal law. I
Yeah.
found that one out.
Yep. And
You
that's
can't
something.
fire at them. If you kill one, you're going to jail. You can't mount it. You're not
It's
even
a
supposed to be
felony.
hunting them. You're not even supposed to be photographing them. You're not supposed to be documenting them. You're not supposed to be molesting them.
Right.
Period.
It's a felony if you shoot a Bigfoot, and as a federal law. Isn't that crazy? Yet they don't exist, but you'll get in trouble if you hurt one.
Yeah,
That's crazy.
but they don't exist. Remember
But they
that.
don't exist. And
Yeah,
this one,
that one. A friend of mine. He he goes on these trips all across the United States. He loves mountain. He's an outdoors guy, and he sent that to me. That was in what is it? Crystal Spring? No, hold on. That's in Colorado. I can't remember the name of the town. Crystals? Is it Crystal Spring? Oh man, what? Dang it! The name of the town escapes me. But for some reason, there's a military installation that's real close by there. A dome that's located there, and some kind of like a prison encampment there. That they're not being operated, it's just empty. But he sent me that a picture when he was out there hiking. That's what he found
right,
right
right.
there in Colorado.
Yeah, man, that's wild. Right in Colorado. There's all kinds of stuff out there. I had a TV channel that contacted me, and they were asking for stories or juice or whatever. And I said, look, go look at this spot right here, and I bet you'll find something. And sure enough, they found something, and they were like, holy crap, this is for real.
Man,
um,
I
but
was at a Bigfoot conference about 3 years ago. No, not three. About 4 years ago, right before COVID hit. No, it's 5 years ago, right before COVID hit. And I was at a Bigfoot conference, and I don't know out of nowhere, this guy came up to me, and you could tell he was from overseas, a British guy. And he offered me, he's like, "Hey, if you can take me somewhere where they have a Bigfoot. He goes, I'll give you $50,000, but you have to, take me to it, and I have to kill one. And the second he told me that, I'm like, man, anytime anybody offers you big money, just like that out of nowhere, it can lead to nothing good.
No, no. In fact, there was a low budget film that made a couple years ago that was really good, and it was about this freak hunter guy that hired some kid near the border, and he wanted to he paid like a huge amounts of money because he wanted to hunt some rare animal out there. And yeah, the whole thing turned bad. The guy ended up shooting somebody by mistake. Then he's trying to kill the kid he hired, and it just went ugly. But it just shows the point of what you just said. If somebody comes flashing that amount of cash for something like that, it's not going to come anything good. By the way, that reminds me. Speaking of coming anything good, you've heard of that TV show Breaking Bad, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now that show is awfully dark to the point that like I watched the whole series and I thought it was brilliant, but I can't stomach to watch it because there's so much just bad and dark stuff in it. But one thing I thought was brilliant about that series was they really showed how evil works. You have a good person who has a normal person, normal life, normal job, and a family, and they start making small little compromises towards that dark side. To the next thing, you realize you're invested and you don't have a way out except to go through to hard charge it, right? And
Yep.
now you've just compounded everything and made everything worse for yourself and everybody else. But now you're stuck in it, and that just leads you on a path of becoming darker and darker. It reminded me what you said when you joined that cartel. You weren't about wanting to kill people or torture or hurt people, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you even got to a point where you realized you were going to have to take out people whether you wanted to or not for self-preservation. You're invested at that point. You know what I
Yep.
mean?
Yep.
But your story is the opposite. Instead of Breaking Bad, your story is the complete opposite of that show and that storyline. You're Breaking Good, meaning you were in all that stuff and you were able to do a progression of coming out of it to becoming from being in the high life of the fast lane with all that stuff. You talked before about, oh, I had so many women on my shoulders. I had so much money. I was so respected. And then now you're like, oh, I'm just an average dude now. um, but you
Yeah.
came through that even further to realize the absolute beauty and wonder and joy of life, that now you have a wife and now you have a child and now you've discovered a whole new happiness and meaning to your life. It's the whole story in reverse. Breaking Bad. Your story is Breaking Good.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, nothing. There is no amount of money that can make me leave the comfort that I have now. I mean, I work for a living. I mean, you know it. Like, how long has it been? It's taken me months to get to sit down and talk to you again. I mean, we talk every now and then, about what's going on and things. But I mean, to literally sit down and, hey, let's have a conversation and let's do a little podcast. Like, it's taken me months, you
Right.
know. But like I said, I wouldn't give none of that up for anything that anybody's got to offer me. Now, unless I won the lottery, heck yeah, I'll take it by that. But I mean, I'm not compromising my lifestyle, my son's life, my mother, my wife, my nephews. Like, I'm living as close to the American dream as you could possibly think of. I mean, I still struggle day to day, with the problems that everybody has. And,
Sure.
sometimes the hurricane came and destroyed a lot of things. And, I had a little bit of money saved up. And I mean, they went down the gutter on that one. But guess what? I'm
Right.
still alive. I got my health and I can rebuild all that stuff again.
Right. Right. Yep. I always find that God always helps, but he usually, oftentimes with me, waits to the last minute to do it. But he's always there, always does it. And it might not be everything you want, but it's enough that you need. You know what I mean? So,
Hmm.
and oftentimes I try to tell people God likes his people on the poorer side than richer side because they tend to be better people that way. Um, Jesus told the apostles, hey, if you got a choice when you move to a new town, to stay with the rich or stay with the poor, he's like, always choose the poor and stay there because he's like, they tend to be better people. So, so yeah, that's awesome. Tell me about you were telling me about the story about what happened that since I just did the show about vampires, you had a situation in New Orleans. What was that?
Man, So this is what right around the time that I was still in the cartel business. Like I would love to go to New Orleans because over there no one knew who the hell I was and or what I did. I could go over there and I could pull $10,000 cash and gamble it all away, and then pull another 10,000 and go partying, and had that cartel lifestyle, right?
Right.
So I met this chick in Dallas one time, and she was a pretty hot little thing, and I'm just gonna tell y'all because it has part something to do with the story. The way the women that I liked were the Selma Hayek looking type chick, short, long black hair, olive colored skin. That's my preferred taste in women. So she decides, hey, let's meet up and let's do something. And me being the person I am, because I have a shady past and I have a shady business, I say, let's go to New Orleans. I'll fly you out there. We'll meet up and we'll party out there. And she says, okay, let's go. Well, I got two of my buddies that tagged along with me, and we're out there having a good time. Old girl shows up. We're out there in New Orleans. Eating, drinking, having a good time, going to the casinos, and out of nowhere, these three girls show up. I mean, three beautiful Hispanic-looking chicks, brunettes. I mean, Selma Hayek-looking women, just beautiful, flawless, and they're out there having drinks with us, and we're talking and making me reevaluate. Like, man, I just brought sand to the beach. I brought this girl. I'm like, when we had girls here already, why did I bring her? Long story short, at the end of the night, they want to go out partying, go to strip clubs, and keep partying over there in New Orleans. The girl that I'm with, she wants to, hey man, I'm done. Let's just go to the hotel. I'm not feeling good. I drank too much. Let's just me and you have a good evening and watch a movie and just call it for the night.
Right.
So I'm like, you know what, screw it. I don't want to blow it off with this chick. So I went back to the hotel with her. Time passes on. A couple days go by. I haven't heard from my guy friends. And I call them and they're like, yeah, man, we've been really under the weather. He's like, man, we drank a lot. And, I just feel like shit. Like somebody beat the hell out of me with bats and all that. And then I ask him, I'm like, hey, bro, which one of the those little Hispanic chicks did you hook up with? And he's like, Hispanic. I'm like, yeah, yeah. He was like, well, which one of the three little brunettes did you hit? And he's all like, black. He's like, they weren't brunettes. I'm like, yeah, they were black haired. And he tells me, no, 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 they were redheads. I'm like, what the fuck is this guy? Like, dude, they were black hair. They had black hair. I'm here arguing with him. He's like, no, they had red hair. I'm like, what the fuck? Like, there's no way. So he gets his he gets his homeboy, my other homeboy, on the phone. He's like, he calls him. He's like, hey man, what color were these chicks' hair? And he says they were blonde. I'm like, what? No, 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 no. And I thought they were messing with me. So I get pissed off and angry that these guys are like, I know what I saw. I saw three girls with black hair, and now you're trying to play me for like a fool. That's one of my biggest pet peeves and one of my biggest anger points, that you try to play me for a freaking fool. I know what I saw, but then all of a sudden these guys are like, we're all arguing, and I'm like, hold on. Let me get this girl. Her name was Danielle. I'm like, Danielle, like, what color hair was those girls' hair? And she goes, those weren't no damn girls. Those are some old ass ancient mummies. And I'm like, what? She's like, your friends have no taste in women. And he's like, and if y'all can party with women like that, y'all are just horrible people. He's like, those are some old ass looking women, just grungeful looking. And I'm like, what the hell is she talking about? And she goes, yeah, those women were horrible looking. He's like, they look like they're about 100 years old.
That's
And
wild. That's
yeah,
wild. But that does not surprise me about New Orleans, which is literally an hour in this direction from me right now. I was born there, by the way. I'm from New Orleans, East Side. You always have to say when you're from New Orleans if you're from the East Side or West Side. I'm from the East Side, not the West Side.
yeah. And that's just one, like, I never thought about that story until I heard old girl, talking about the weird things that happened in New Orleans. I'm like, hey, wait a minute, like that was a strange thing that happened to us. Like,
There's some weird stuff that go on in New Orleans. That's why it's a great place to hear about vampire stories. And that woman said, and Kimberly said in her interview that she said that that woman who claimed to be a vampire said that there were four different kinds of vampires, and New Orleans was the only place in the world where all four were there.
yeah, these guys told me that they drank and partied, and he's like, then like they all both of them blacked out, and he's like, they woke up about a day later, in their hotel rooms, and he's like, man, it feels like somebody just ran, like just beat us with bats. Like
See,
every inch of their body was hurting.
that's because they took energy from them, like that vampire and that with Kimberly that we did. She talked about the psychic vampire that steals energy from your body, and that's why they wake up. They don't have a recollection of what happened, and they wake up and they feel like miserable. I mean, like they're fighting off the flu or something, or had 10 guys beat them. They're drained, you
Yeah,
know.
yeah. And he's like, dude, I feel like every inch of my body done got beat with bats. He's like, I can't even walk right now.
There was a story I was tracking years ago in New Orleans, and there were photographs. People put out a website showing this girl's photograph at different bars in New Orleans, and they were trying to warn people. They said that this woman was a succubus and that she would take your energy, and she just looked like a beautiful young blonde woman. And but they showed her in different bars at different places, and they were doing like a website on there trying to warn people, if you ever see this girl, stay away from her. That there were guys that literally came up missing, that she picked up in a bar or something, and it was this story about this. They called her the succubus. So yeah, I mean, there's some high crazy. And then I've told people before, there was a story in New Orleans I heard one time where this bartender, I don't know if I said this in Kimberly's show or not, but this bartender was closing up late one night, this bar in New Orleans, and there was like a grunge couple in there, and all decked out in the gothic black and all that kind of stuff, and black lipstick and nails and all that, and they got into a friendly conversation as the bar owner, who was enjoying talking to them as he was closing up shop for the night. Well, after he finished and he was getting ready to, lock the doors up, they were going to leave. And then the girl says to the boyfriend, she says, "Show him." And the boyfriend's hesitant. He's like, "Eh," and the girl's like, "Show him." And he's like, and the girl's like, "No, show him." And so the boyfriend and the bartender's like, "Show me what?" He's curious. The boyfriend walks back to the bar, to the bartender. He opens his mouth, and he said, as he watched, two large fangs protruded down his mouth and then sucked back up. And then he smiled at the guy. They both smiled at him real creepy, and then they walked off. And the bartender's like, what? So that was one of the New Orleans stories. There's a whole subculture in New Orleans about vampires, but those are all fakes, But it wouldn't surprise me that the real deal goes on. New Orleans is not like anywhere else. And even when they did that movie, Anne Rice's movie, Interview with a Vampire, it was all about New Orleans too.
Didn't
So,
that movie True that series True Blood, wasn't it based out of New Orleans too?
yep, True Blood was all shot in New Orleans, right? It was shot in Louisiana, right? It was all it
Yeah.
was all about Louisiana.
Man,
Yep,
I've
yep.
heard also heard stories about people going out partying out there, going to strip clubs that then they go back to look for them. They had a wild ride and they liked it and they did all kind of weird stuff in there. They go back to look for the place and the place is no longer there. Never existed. Just an
Yeah,
abandoned building.
there when Kimberly came on and talked about the vampire situation she had in New Orleans, a lot of people were responding to that. And one guy I was talking about was this one kid said that he became friends with this guy online, and they shared a lot of the same interests. And the guy invited him to his house one day, and he Google mapped the location and had like the physical paper. He goes to this guy's house, and he says it was weird. It was like this super giant mansion, first of all, and he said that like this kid's like from the hood. He doesn't know anybody that lives in giant mansions and has like Bentleys and stuff outside. And he said he met with the kid. The kid said his parents were out of town, and they went in. And he said one thing he noticed that was really strange about the house is it had all these rooms when you walked in, and all these rooms had like period pieces in them, like knight's armor or samurai armor. So it's like,
Yeah.
if you remember the first Batman movie with Michael Keaton, when you walked in his mansion, he had that. He had like African statues of warriors, and then he had like knights with armor. Like it reminded me of that. But the kid said he saw that, and it kind of freaked him out a little bit. Then he said he went down the hall, and it just became like a normal house. And he goes in this kid's room, and they talk for a long time. And the kid went to go to the bathroom or something. And he said he noticed this room across the hall from this kid's room, and he said it had this giant, I mean, like giant book in it. And he said that he flipped through these pages of the book. It was talking about like the history of like the Anunnaki and that kind of stuff. But it also went into all these different creatures and monsters. And he said it went from monsters to human beings. And then he said it was like uh, a, a geological like bloodline of their family. And he asked the kid, "What is this?" And he's like, "Yeah, it's a history of our family." But it started off with these monsters and then went to all the way back from like Egyptian or pre-Egyptian times, all the way up to like modern day, photographs of people in suits and stuff. And the kid was like, "This is weird." He left. He told his brother about it, and his brother wanted to go see it. So he's like, "Yeah, well, I still have the paper with the Google Maps with the directions. I was there yesterday." He's like, "Come with me, and I'll take you to meet this kid." And the brother's like, "Okay." So they get in the car and they go back to the house. The house is gone. No house is there. They went to the exact place he drove to the day before. He still had the Google Maps map in his hand. And he said the location was there where the house was, but it was nothing but an open field.
Yep. I've,
How
I've,
how
I've
insane
heard,
is that?
yeah, I've heard of stories like that in Mexico too. Trust me,
All right,
it's
you
weird.
heard that in Mexico as well? What'd you hear?
I heard the same thing that people have throw parties out there, and like so out there where we're from, it's like a mountainous area, and sometimes they'll have parties out there, but in these fields of orange groves or the mandarin groves or wherever. And sometimes people will put big houses out there so that way the police didn't come bother them, or if they got like enemy soldiers coming in, they could see from a long distance because there's nothing out there but these
Right.
trees, and you got cameras everywhere. And some people was like, "Yeah, I went to a party out here in this town, and man, that house is badass, huge. Like, I've never seen something like that." And then, well, let's go look at it. And you're driving down this trail, and you're driving for about an hour, and then once you get to where the house should have been at, it's just a big empty lot. Like, just you could tell there was something there, but there is no house. There's no pool. There was no trace of nothing.
That is wild, man. That is wild. Um, that is insane. I mean, how do you even reconcile like mentally with something like that? You know what I mean? Like,
Hmm.
you're just there. You're at this party. It was real, and then now a day later, all that's just gone. They didn't just come and demolish it. So what in the world happened? I mean, time was altered in some way, and why? For a party? I mean, how does that even make sense? You know what I mean? Like, so even if someone had the ability to manipulate time, they're not going to do it for just a party. You know what I mean?
Oh no, they
So,
were there. I'm pretty sure that was a bait trap from hell, and a couple people probably disappeared from there, and never to be seen again.
right, right, yeah. So that's the craziness too, is the people, the disappearance and stuff. I mean, there's dark stuff out there, and unfortunately, it preys on people who don't know better. So the takeaway: be careful. Don't answer voices calling your name in the woods. If you ever hear the back of the hair in the neck, I can learn to speak. If you ever feel the hair on the back of your neck go up, you hear that little tiny voice in your head saying, "Don't stay in here and talk to talking dogs that are debating if they're going to kill you. Just get in your car and go." Follow those voices. In fact, I'll tell you this: if you're ever approaching like the woods, I do this as a hunter. When I approach the woods before I enter with like all my hunting gear and stuff like that, I try to feel the woods, and if it feels safe, then I'll enter. If there's something there that just says something's off in any kind of way, then I know that's not the day to hunt, and I leave. All right. So I would recommend you learn to listen to that little still voice. There's been many, many, many dogman stories where people run into dogmen and they hear a little voice in their head that gives them instructions. Get down, hide, wait, go to this, go to that. You listen to those instructions if you want to live. It's kind of like, hey, Sarah Connor, come with me if you want to live in Terminator, right? Sorry, my impressions are not that good. But anyway, So that's the takeaway. There are things out there that we're not aware of or that we don't understand, and there are evil forces out there that prey on humanity. So stay away from those areas, and you hopefully won't become, you know, Alpo,
Yeah.
cow, dog food.
Or what do you call it? One of those. Remember those the 1990s? The little boxes of juice. You don't want to be a blood bag of those for somebody.
Yeah, right. Oh, speaking of, I heard a that reminds me too. I heard a story recently of a woman on TikTok. This woman said that, which by the way, I find some of the best material on TikTok because the stuff I used to follow is a lot harder to find because of the censorship. It's a lot harder to find in other places, and old videos have been removed. So it's harder to find good stories and content or to back up stuff I'm trying to say of stuff I know but can't reproduce footage of. But this woman comes on TikTok and says that she was I think she was like a nurse, like kind of like a traveling nurse or for hire nurse, and she was interviewing for a job at a blood bank. And long story short, she basically was saying what she came to realize from this blood bank is that it was literally what these like power elites were using this place as a blood bank for vampires. That was her story.
Wow. Damn.
And she was going public with it. Yeah, and like yeah, she was saying this was like high end people use this, but she said she came to discover in working there that that's what this place was. It was a place for, and that they had many places like that, but it was a place for basically for vampires. I mean, it was crazy. So
Well,
that was her testimony about the story. And she goes into more detail. It's been a while since I heard it, but that was basically the story.
well, that's how the movie stars too. They take that adrenochrome that keeps them looking young and healthy and fresh. But what a lot of people don't realize when you drink that adrenaline, you're actually taking in that person's fear and their memories and all that torture and trauma. Like you're looking young, but trust me, if you stop and look at some of these Hollywood elites, how they have to be on cocaine so much, how much fucking alcohol they have to consume and painkillers in order to.
And they refuse to look in mirrors.
Yep,
That's a
because
big one.
they see the I guess the victim, the trauma and the victim eyes. They see all that, the horrible shit that they're
They,
going through.
they say they see demons and stuff too. So there's
Yeah.
a lot of these stars. They'll have makeup artists, but they won't look in a mirror. Um, yeah, you got to wonder how some of these people are ageless. I mean, ageless. And here's another thing too: if they stop taking that adrenal chrome, they age very quickly, very fast. Um, but yeah, there's a big for those that don't know. The biggest drug in Hollywood and among the power elites of the world is adrenochrome. And adrenochrome is extracted from children. This is um, this is part of why the trafficking system has been set up for the human trafficking and the child trafficking. Some of it is for sexual abuse. They'll use these kids for sex slaves. Some of it is for ritual abuse. They'll torture them and kill them in human sacrifice rituals to their evil gods. And a large portion of it, if not the biggest, is for adrenochrome. And
Organ
there was
harvesting too.
yeah, organ. That's another big one. That's another big one. Organ harvesting, especially for elites and stuff. Um, but there's remember the Anthony Weiner laptop I talked about on here before, and that was when they found Anthony. By the way, Anthony Weiner's wife just married George Soros's son, who took over the George Soros dynasty after he died. Right? Evil on evil on evil. But Anthony Weiner had a video on his computer that the three-letter agencies confiscated in a raid, and in that he had a file that was named what was it called? Insurance policy. And when you clicked on insurance policy, it showed a video of Anthony Weiner's wife and Hillary, which is what I call that evil bitch. Sorry, sorry for my Cajun. Um, but but it depicted Anthony Weiner's wife and Hillary torturing a young girl to the point that they killed her and extracted the adrenochrome. And he had this all on video, and it was. I don't want to go into the details because it's stomach turning. In fact, there were no less than 11 um, hardened New York City police detectives that witnessed this video in their criminal investigation. Of those 11, all right, um, nine of them, see if I can count, nine of them were suicided, murdered, all right, and the rest got promoted. Imagine that. So, like big promotions. So, uh, the federal government made the whole thing go away. Just like, oh, I'm destroying my own personal servers, which would put anyone else in prison for tampering with evidence. Go away, you know, or Biden's son's laptop. Oh, go away, you know. But hey,
Mm-hmm.
you jaywalked one time with a traffic ticket from like 40 years ago. We're gonna convince you in a jury that you're a felon of like 58 charges we just made up.
Laws
It's
are only enforceable for poor people.
well, that's like during the during the last presidential election with Trump, Hillary was like, "Why don't you tell people how much you paid in taxes?" And he was like, "Hey, I take advantage of the same things you do and everybody else that's on our level, where we have it's written in the law. They have ways where they don't have to pay taxes. There's loopholes where they can write it off and not pay anything, and all the rich know how to follow those loopholes. But for everybody else, you got to ante up. So, um, that's a whole other job. Sancho, is there anything else that I didn't bring up or that you wanted to add?
Oh man, there's man, there's all kinds of stuff that not just happened to me, but other people that I've interviewed and talked to since, man, basically since 2008. Weird things. Um, I mean, I don't know. I know you're pressed on time, but we could talk about some of that stuff on another date. Because I mean, like I said,
Sure.
when I was working the oil fields after I got out of the cartel, like I started looking into this stuff, and I would, I'd be in certain parts of the United States and make friends with people and get into these chat rooms, and I'd meet people, and I'd go into these woods like, hey man, there's a guy you need to talk to out here. There's a woman you need to talk to out here. This person has a question, and I met so many people from California to New York. I had a guy that was out of New York one time. We were on a discussion of Dogman, and he's like, oh, well, I don't know anything about those wolves that y'all got. But he's like, but we got hyenas out here that walk on their back legs, and they're about 7 feet tall. And he's
Yep.
like, they're running in the Adirondacks area. He's like, man, you're more than welcome to come out here, and I could take you. I'm like, no, I'll take your word for it. Like, I don't.
Yeah. I've heard many stories about hyena type dog man. And you mentioned earlier when we talked about the fox man. The fox man is like a fox version of a dog man. However,
Oh,
and seen a lot of times in the Appalachians, but I will say this, I've never heard an aggressive story of a fox man.
no, not just mentioned the fox man because this was during COVID. My dad had game chicken. Like for those of you that don't know what game chicken is, it's basically fighting roosters, and like he had about 5 acres of fighting chickens, and we used to have them disappear here back in throughout the years, and my dad had this property, and they still have it there, but no chickens anymore. He died during COVID, but when it was up and running full blast, we had about 5 acres of fighting chickens, and they would disappear here every now and then. And part of my dad's job and our job as kids growing up, and we had to kill possums and raccoons and foxes and all this kind of weird stuff. And I remember it was like right around like my junior year, my old man, he's like, hey, get up, there's a fox out there, has been killing the chickens and he's back. And so I get out there, and I get my 22 out, and he's got his shotgun loaded with rock salt and everything. And he goes, it ran across the street in front of our house where there's a big culvert that's about 3 feet round. And he's like, he ran in there. And he's like, go on one side of the covert. I'll go on one side of the covert, see which end he comes out of, and we'll bash this fox. And one side of the covert was packed in with mud and dirt to where you can only see about 6 inches of it, right? And on the other side, it was wide open. So I told my dad, "Hey man, shine the light on your end and let me see what's over here." And when he shined the light, I could see this like little fox in there, and I'm like, "Oh man, I got this little sucker right here." And he was right up against the hole. And I tell my dad, like, "Hey, put the flashlight down and get the hell away from the other end of the covert because I'm about to shoot into it and kill this fox." And he gets out of the way, and I put that 22 barrel, and like I could feel that animal hit the butt of the barrel, and I just fire a couple shots into it because this 22 was the kind that you load from under the barrel. I don't know if you remember those; they don't make them anymore. It's like you pull the rod out, and you could have put about 10, 22 rounds in there, put it back, and then it shoots out, and it's like as fast as you could pull that trigger. I unloaded like 5 or 6 shots and killed this thing. But I couldn't go into the culvert because it was too small, and we left it alone. And well, to make a long story short, after that, man, something started throwing rocks at our house. Like something was jumping on the roof and screaming, and I mean, it busted out the windows of the house, and I'm like, man, what the hell was that? And then my dad told me, he's like, you're not gonna believe what what that was last night. I go, what? He goes, it was that fox. Like like the fox didn't throw. He's like, yeah, it was the fox. He goes, he was running around, jumping on the house and throwing rocks through the house, and I'm like, that's what's busting out the windows. And I'm like, what the hell? So we go to where the culvert was at, and you looked in there, and that fox was gone. The one that I killed, like you could shine light in there because when you shine the light, you could see it was dead down in there, but it was gone. Like when I killed it, you could see it, but like when we went back the next day, well during the daytime, like it was just completely gone.
Hmm.
And then
Wow.
when my dad died during COVID, my mom says she saw a fox out there because we sold all the chickens because like my dad was the main one that took care of all of them. He sold everything, and she said like after we got rid of all the chickens and everything, that we sold them off and gave them away to friends of his and friends of mine. That she said saw a fox that stood up about like little about 4 feet and a half. She's like, I thought it was. I guess I thought he was just looking for something to eat or one of the chickens. She goes
Right.
until this thing stood up, just looked around, stood up, and then walked away and walked into the woods.
Wow.
And I'm like, holy shit.
Right.
And but
Right.
nothing never after that came about it. Kind of
Is it
freaked me out a little bit.
not normal for foxes to throw rocks?
Yeah, yeah, and I was like, what? Like, even at the time, like I said, I was like in high school, and this is like way before any of the stuff that I know now that came into to play. It happened, but like
Right.
right around COVID, my mom said she like after my dad died and everything got sold off, that yeah, he's like, she goes, I saw this fox, and he's like, I thought he was coming here looking for chickens, and it just stood up. And
Right.
usually fox don't come during the day;
Yeah. Right.
they come at night. And she said it was daytime when she saw it.
Hmm. That's wow. One of the listeners says, "Do you know of any stories around Kingman, Arizona?"
I don't know where Kingman, Arizona is at, but I have heard of. Well, I go from my people from the Indian reservation out there, and she tells me that they do have a lot of the reptilians,
Oh, really?
the what do you call those things? Those white, not white walk, but
Rakes.
yeah, those rakes. That they have stories of those rakes and quite a bit of Bigfoot out there. But
Yep.
like I said, I don't know where Kingman, Arizona is at, but they're like, trust me, there's stuff out there. If you get to looking out there, you get to poking around, you'll find people. I mean, you gotta look. Sometimes you'll find them in Facebook groups or like even in TikTok. I found people in TikTok, and I'll put something in a comment and see who takes the bait. They're like, "Hey, how do you know this?" And I'm like, "What do you mean? How do I like? Well, this information that you don't know unless you know." And then I
Right.
asked them a question, and the next thing you know, we get to talking, and then they're like, "Hey, if you want to, they'll give me a number to call, which I know it's a burner phone, and I have my burner phone that I use, and I call them, and like we discuss stories, and even when I worked in the oil fields, like I was told, I remember there was a guy that told me when we were working in Corpus Christi, Texas. that his cousin shot a two. He didn't know at the time. He goes, man, I shot a two wolves that stood on their hind legs with human hands. Is what he said.
In
He
Corpus
goes,
Christi,
huh?
in Corpus,
No. I was in Corpus when he was telling me that. And he
you're
said he
telling me
shot that dog in what was it? Port Lavaca.
yeah,
That's on the
my
Gulf side.
family,
Huh?
my family's from Corpus.
Okay, yeah. And he said he was out there in Port Lavaca hunting, and he said he's hunting. And he didn't see anything, and he said he saw two wolves playing around out there. And he goes, and just the weird thing is, they stood up and on their back legs and they were wrestling around. And he goes, I'm looking at them. He goes, I could see the hands, and like he said, they were only like 5 feet tall. Like they weren't very big. And he said he shot one and hit it right in the back behind the ear and laid it out. And the other one took off. So he went out there with his four wheeler, picked it up, and I mean, said he had a hell of a time. He just threw it on the four wheeler and he sat on top of the dog man and rolled out of there with it. And he took it to a taxidermy. And he told him, hey, I need this stuff, yada, yada, yada. About a couple hours later, the taxidermy guy called him. He's like, hey, man, how much do you want for this animal? He's like, I don't want anything. I just want you to stuff it. And he's like, well, I got a guy here that wants to buy it. And he said he'll give you 100,000 for it. And he's like, no, I don't want 100,000. Just stuff it. And they came back and they gave him an offer. Like they offered him up to 250,000 for this dog man creature, whatever it was. And he said no. He said the next day, he said a couple of black trucks rolled up to his house, took him out, arrested him, took him out in the middle of nowhere, started questioning him about where he shot these two. I mean, where he shot that dog man at, and if he had any pictures. And they took his phone and they rummaged through it and they kept his phone. They ransacked his house, and he's like, well, who did you talk to about this? How many people? And they gave him the whole nine, and he got his bank accounts frozen, and like he said, he went through hell. And then
That's the
he said
same story I've heard 100 times over. Yep,
well, he went and tried to get in hold of the taxidermy place, and when he said he went to look for the taxidermy place, the place was burnt down to the ground. And the guy that owned it told him he didn't want to have nothing to do with them. He didn't want to talk to him about anything and to stay the fuck away from him. And he's like, he's like, I didn't know what to do. He's like, it's like that the whole thing never happened.
that's what
He goes, and I
happened.
don't know what it was. And people make fun of him for that. And I'm like,
I,
and
I've had people that have been told by three-letter agencies that tell them, look, I don't care if you have evidence, but if it's too good, if the video's too good, if it's too impressive, then they said, then we will stop, we will intervene, we will come take it, we will take it down, we don't care if you put up stuff, especially if it's like, well, I could kind of make something out, but like they don't want really strong evidence out there. They said we will come after it. And I know several stories, and I know people who, yeah, these feds have showed up and they said, we want everything, and we will throw you in prison, and we will throw away the prison. You know,
yeah, yeah. People have asked me sometimes, like, well, why don't you just go out there and shoot one yourself and bring it back? I'm like, that's to tell you the part. Like that could be the easiest part of doing it. I said the hard part comes out when the government finds out what you're doing, and all hell is gonna break loose because they're gonna make you a pariah of this town. They're gonna make you look like a fool. And once they do that, they're gonna, they'll shut you and your family. They don't care if you and your family starve to death, and they'll make a, oh, this guy was evading taxes. This guy, oh, you're a child molester. All they got to do is make out one, go to the news. Hey, put this guy's face on there in this story. Next thing you know, you're a child predator. You were this fictitious character that everybody believes is real.
that's it.
Yeah,
That's called a straw man. Yep.
there you go, strong man.
Yep, they try to discredit you. And then if that doesn't work, then they try to put you in prison. If that doesn't work, then they shoot your ear right here.
Yeah, and then you unalive yourself when you have no hands.
Right, exactly. You don't allow yourself yet, like Phil
And you tied
Schneider.
yourself to the rafter of the house, and you didn't have hands or feet, but somehow you were able to make it to the top and
Right.
choke yourself to death.
Yeah, yeah. Or you were robbed and you were killed in a robbing, but you still have your wallet, you still have your fancy watch, you still have your
Yeah.
your expensive wedding ring. I mean, but it was a robbery.
Yep.
Yeah, man, I tell you, it's a lot of high craziness that goes on. But yeah, that's scary stuff. But I will warn people, if my advice and all the stuff I've come across, the amount of research I've been able to put together with these things, people I've talked to and interviewed, if you ever come across a dog man, Bigfoot, something like that, do not, and I mean do not try to shoot it. 9 times out of 10, you're just going to piss it off and it's going to rip you apart. That's how it works. 9 times out of 10, that's how that story ends. Okay. Um, if you come across something like that, you do not want to be threatening. If you have a gun, I wouldn't put it on the ground, but I would hold it down at my side, and I would put my palms out. Hopefully, I'd have a sling even, and I put my palms out open and down, showing that you're not a threat. Don't make direct eye contact. I'll still watch in my peripheral vision, but don't make eye contact because it can be a challenge. Don't show your teeth because it can be a challenge. In predatory world, you monkeys, dogs, you show your teeth. It's an aggression attack sign. Okay, meaning you're wanting to fight. You slowly try to avoid direct eye contact. Always use your peripheral vision. Also, try to watch your flanks and also look at your rear, because another tactic these things use is one will get your attention while one sneaks up on your side or behind you. So you have to be mindful of that. But you just try to slowly walk out of there, and hopefully it's not in a super hungry, I need food for dinner mode, you know. Now, if it's acting aggressive, and even if it acts aggressive, give it some leniency. But if it starts to attack, then then do what you got to do to try to defend yourself. All bets are off at that point. They're fighting for your life, you know. Do not run. Do not run. Do not run. That just triggers prey drive in any animal. So you try to remain calm. You try to remain collective, and don't do anything too fast, sudden, or aggressive, and just show that you just want to get out of there. You know. And like I said, if it starts to attack, and you'll know, because sometimes there'll be like um, Bigfoots, a lot of times Bigfoots will do like what apes do. They'll do bluff charges even, as a intimidation tactic. But now I've seen lots of times where that bluff charge, they come ram you and you go flying. There was a guy one time hunting with his son, came across a Bigfoot, and it was mad it was in their territory, and it kept running into him, knocking. I mean, they were getting hurt. But luckily, it didn't kill him, but it easily could have. I mean, these things are massive, and you can't outrun these things. You can't outrun a Bigfoot. You can't outrun a dog man, so don't even try. Just try to be calm, smooth, and pray. I would always recommend praying to Jesus, especially at that point. And if you hear that little small voice in your head, you follow it. You follow what it says to do, because it will save your life. But do not go hunting for dog men or Bigfoots. Do not go looking for them. And and certainly do not try to shoot one unless you've got no other option, because like I said, 9 times out of most guns, especially on the male mature ones of either one of these creatures, most guns store bought are not going to do anything to hurt them. You might get lucky with a well placed shot or in a softer area, but 9 times out of 10, um, that doesn't go that way. So I would highly recommend not doing it. Stay out of areas where I know right now where I could go find dog men just an hour from me, and then Bayou Sauvage, the big swamp right before the New Orleans airport. There's tons of sightings in there. The problem is, you go looking in there, chances are you're not coming back. so uh, so have at. There's other little islands around swamps here too, where people have had lots of sightings of these creatures.
Houma, Louisiana. I was in Houma, Louisiana, like 6 months before COVID too, and we were staying in a, a hotel out there. And as soon as nightfall stopped in that town shut down, turned into ghost town, and they like not even the cops and the hotel people tell you like, hey man, you might want to stay in here, don't go out nowhere, don't just as soon as nighttime falls, it's like just stay here. It's like there's no reason, don't walk the streets. Even the Walmarts there shut down.
Yep.
I'm like, what the hell? And then come to find out, he's like, we got giant gray wolves out here. And
Right.
like, I asked him, like, what do you mean giant gray wolves? The lady didn't want to tell me anymore. She's like, we just have giant gray wolves. That's all you need to know. And
Right.
I'm like, well, talk to me. And he's like, well, I was like, that's all you need to know. They're giant gray wolves. And I'm like, I'll take your word for that too. And
Right.
they were not playing around.
No. No. Look, check this video out real quick. I've shown before, but it's been a while, and it's on this topic, and then we'll close it
Ongoing
out. Check this out.
investigation, but we'll keep you up to date. And finally tonight, werewolf, Bigfoot, missing link, perhaps an elaborate hoax. The people in Taylor, Mississippi would like answers to these very questions. Our own Amber Maddox is in the field to follow the story of Horror in the Hamlet.
For residents of tiny Taylor, Mississippi, it's the classic case of things that go bump in the night. Strange noises, unexplained shadows, and dogs barking for no reason have become the norm, all associated with what many in the area called the swamp booger.
Now I blew it up so you can probably see it a little better.
But a recent photo taken by local Tina Bragg may have just substantiated what has long been considered a myth.
Now I reckon you can really see it there. And is that one scary looking something? Look at that mouth. Look at that eye. That ain't your natural dog running around in the bushes.
A sudden rash of animal mutilations and strange droppings have many believing that the mysterious creature is anything but a myth.
I ain't never seen nothing like that.
Aubrey Dale is a cattle farmer and was once skeptical of what he considered a fairy tale. But the discovery of some of his livestock torn apart by an unseen attacker and unexplained feces in his backyard has Mr. Dale rethinking his previous stance.
We had some cows tore up in the field, man. There was this stuff on the ground, this crap, man. I ain't never seen nothing look like that.
Though many in the area believe that this is the work of a Sasquatch, local Billy Teague is convinced this is the work of a creature from Cajun country known as the Lougarou.
Man, mutilating animals, cutting animals' heads off, howling at the moon. That's the Lougarou, all right, and I promise you, the worst is yet to come.
For now, local authorities aren't commenting on their investigation, but they are looking into the reports that grow in number with each passing week. For Tina Bragg, the answers can't come soon enough.
I live by myself, and let me tell you what, I'm going to be some scared somebody until the government or somebody comes down here and does something about this creature that's been terrorizing this town of Taylor. I'm tired of it, and everybody else is. And I want to know what it is, and I want it gone.
Reporting from Taylor, Mississippi, I'm Amber Maddox for Channel 7 News.
How's that, right?
Yeah.
So you see that? What's that?
Well, remember I told you I went out there. When I told you I went exploring out there during the day, how I got ran out of there?
Right. No, you said you got run out?
Huh?
You said you got run out of there?
Yeah. Yeah, I got ran out of there by the police.
Oh, yeah. Well, the police, I can tell you, they get very aggressive about people going out there looking for this stuff after all the stories that have come out. But you see right here, the sign I have, that's the Cajun word Ruglaroo, which they were saying in the video, right? Ruglaroo. Now, when she interviewed the guy, he gave a different pronunciation and said Loopgaroo. So this is a Ruglaroo and Loopgaroo. And there's some other variations, but those go way back. I think Ruglaroo is the number one, but you hear Loopgaroo a lot too. This two things about this. Number one, this creature has been seen in Louisiana, especially around the swamps, since the Louisiana Purchase back in the 1800s. And the Cajuns here swore there were werewolves in the swamps. And that's what it means. People call them different things, but it's a werewolf, for lack of a better word. And they said these things were living in the swamps. Now, I got this from a Mexican that was selling art on the side of the road. And I asked him, where did you get this? He said it was made in Mexico City. And I said, why are people in Mexico City making things like this? And he said, because they are seeing these creatures there. And so that's why they started making this stuff, because they're seeing them.
Well, I know most of the action that everybody says, if you really want to get crazy and if you want to get brave over there by Taylor, go to Lake Sardis. Or Sardis. I don't know how to pronounce it, but that's
Lake Sardis.
Yeah, they say that's where the real action's at.
But not only that, though, they also say Taylor, Texas.
Yeah.
That's another thing they say. But that said, again, and for legal reasons, I advise nobody to go to these places in search of these creatures. And I promise you this: you go to Taylor, Mississippi, looking for this stuff, and the police will come down on you very, very hard. So they're
And it's not
tired
a
of.
it's not a very big place. If you think you're just gonna go in there and blend, trust me, it is not very big, and everybody knows everybody down there. The second you drive in, they're gonna be on your ass.
Right. So, but anyway, look, we're past 3 hours, and
All right.
yeah, I love that video. I found that a long, long time ago, about the local news story on werewolves in Taylor, Mississippi. These things are real. I've had friends too, by the way, one watching tonight, that for years and years and years have told me they didn't believe this stuff was real. But now, after hearing how big and how many sightings there are, people are starting to, come around saying, "Hey, man, I'm
Yeah.
starting to believe. I'm starting to believe." So, but it's crazy. But anyway, Sancho, thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate it, man. Great show. Great topics. I hope I'm sure the fans will enjoy a lot of the stuff we talked about. Sorry for me taking so long today and starting up getting that new stuff out. I really wanted to talk about the Olympics not being just blasphemy, but was actually a satanic ritual. And I wanted to talk about that little girl who was killed by the weaponized replacement migration, which I think is absolutely evil and satanic. And you see a pattern going on with that in multiple countries. As always, to everybody, Jesus is the solution to everything and every problem in our world. And in many ways, our time is short left on this earth and left in our country. So there's a lot of, pick your card, whether it's a nuclear war, whether it's more pandemics and lockdowns, whether it's power outages, whether it's famines from food supply, that they're creating on purpose, by the way. Why do you think they're buying up all the farmland and incentivizing farmers to kill off all their crops? Oh, and you tested positive for a bad chicken, so now you got to kill everything. Yeah, that makes total sense. Oh, and like those things can't be rigged, right? But anyway, Jesus is God. He's the solution to everything. Draw close to him as best you can while there's still time to do so. And here's another thing too. It doesn't matter what happens in our lives. God will always be with you. He will always be by your side, and he will always be there to help when you need it. And we are not called here to have great lives, comfortable lives. The sole purpose of this life is to do what it takes to get into heaven. This life is only the test for getting into heaven. So when the mark of the beast comes, and it's coming soon, refuse it. Even if that means your life, your family's life, your child's life, refuse it. Refuse it, refuse it, refuse it. Because I'll tell you that there's a woman in the Old Testament called the 7 times martyr. I've mentioned this a long time ago, but it's been a while. There's a woman called the 7 times martyr. This woman was brought in to a Colosseum, and the emperor said, "You will either worship these foreign gods, or I'm going to kill your 6 children in front of you in this Colosseum in horrible ways." And the emperor started with the oldest child and went down to the youngest child. And the woman and her children refused the emperor. They refused to bow down before a pagan god. And the emperor killed one at a time in front of the mother, all her children. And when it came down to that last youngest child, the mother grabs the child and she says, "You do not dishonor your brothers and what they died for. And you stay strong and true." She says, "Because this is the only way I can get you back. This is the only way I can get you back." And the emperor killed the child and then killed her. And Jesus calls her the 7 times martyr. The 7 times martyr, one of the greatest women of the Old Testament. So anyway, don't be afraid, the Bible says, of anyone that can hurt your flesh, but worry about what can kill your soul. And in our world today, everything's trying to kill your soul. Everything. The media, entertainment, the government. We're going to take your children and perform all these chemical changes on them without your permission or knowledge. That's absolutely satanic evil. The child rings that we've been talking about, absolutely satanic evil. There's so much evil in our world today. And the problem is we've lost Christianity. We've lost being a Christian country. We've lost standing up for our morals and our principles and our beliefs. We've compromised on those beliefs. Oh yeah, we just open the doors and let anybody in now. We allowed the wolf into the hen house. Shocker, what happens? You know? Oh, we allow our God to be blasphemed on public television by one of the biggest events of the world. That's okay. You know, it's not okay. Anyway, take care, everybody. God bless. Keep each other in prayer. Please pray for me in the show. Please share the channel. If you have any stories, please send them to HarbingerReport@yahoo.com. If you've got questions for Sancho, email them to me, and I'll try to get them to him. Thank you again, Sancho, for coming on. I hope you and your family have a blessed night and weekend, and that your wife is safe in her travels. And for everybody in the show, keep the lights on.
All right. Thank you.